Some warriors are taught in courtyards, under the morning sun, with a bow in hand and a teacher correcting their stance. Abhimanyu begins earlier than that, earlier than his first breath, earlier than his mother ever saw his face. In the hush of a warm night, while lamps burned low and the air smelled of jasmine and ghee, a child still hidden in the womb learned how to enter the deadliest formation on earth. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're in the war camp after sunset. The conch shells have already sounded their last for the day. Their long cries have faded into the wide dark over Kurukshetra. What remains now is the softer music of survival. Horses shifting in their tethers, wheels creaking as chariots are drawn aside, low voices near cook fires, the faint ring of armor being unfastened piece by piece, as though even metal is too tired to argue. Oil lamps glow in rows like patient little moons. The night air is warm, but no longer cruel. It carries settled dust, burnt sesame oil, sandalwood ash, and rice steaming in bronze pots beyond the nearest tents. If you breathe in deeply, you catch the sweeter notes too. Jasmine woven into a braid, tulsi crushed under a careless heel, clarified butter melting into flame. You walk between the tents. Canvas walls stir gently. Standards hang limp in the dark. Here lies a king on a simple cot, his crown set aside on folded cloth. There sits a charioteer rubbing down horses with practiced hands, whispering to them as if they are children who have seen too much. A little farther on, a group of soldiers share the last of the evening meal from one brass plate, solemnly dividing flatbread like priests, portioning out a vow. Ancient war is still war, but even here, someone is always looking for more salt. The great men of the earth are near. Arjuna, son of Indra, whose arrows once stitched the sky so thickly that daylight itself seemed to hesitate. Bhima, broad as a gateway, who eats like 5 men and fights like a storm. Yudhishthira, steady-eyed, carrying the burden of righteousness even when it weighs more than his armor. Krishna too is here somewhere, dark and luminous, moving through the camp with that calm that makes frightened hearts remember how to beat properly. And yet tonight, for a little while, the camp is quiet. This is the hour when men wash away the day's dust at the water troughs, when women in guarded enclosures untie their hair, when lamps are trimmed low, when a mother places one hand over the curve of her belly and feels, from within, the turning life of someone who does not yet know his own name. You leave the war camp behind for a moment. The darkness softens, the air changes, the smell of iron gives way to river breeze and flowering night vines. You are no longer in the last terrible days of the war, but years earlier, in a gentler night. The moon is thin and silver. The stars look close enough to touch if you stand on the palace terrace and reach over the carved stone railing. Subhadra is there. She is young, bright, and heavy with child. Gold glimmers at her wrists when she moves. Silk gathers in soft folds around her ankles. Her hair carries the perfume of fresh flowers, and the night wind lifts a few strands loose against her cheek. She has come out where the air is cooler, where the heat of the day has finally slipped from the marble, and the child within her rests beneath her heartbeat. Beside her are 2 men, who could never be mistaken for ordinary uncles at a family gathering. One is Arjuna, her husband, warrior among warriors. In his hands lives the knowledge of formations and counter-formations, lines that open and close like the petals of a deadly flower. The other is Krishna, her brother, smiling as though he has all the time in the world, which, with Krishna, is not an unreasonable suspicion. The night is quiet enough for instruction. This is how it begins, not with drums, not with banners, not with a prince standing in a field. It begins with a lesson spoken softly into the dark, while an unborn child listens through the walls of the womb. Arjuna starts describing the Chakravyuha. You can almost see it as he speaks. Ring within ring, a rotating labyrinth of chariots, elephants, horsemen, and archers, a moving wheel of war, beautiful from a distance, fatal up close. It does not merely stand there waiting. It turns, it folds, it swallows. To enter it, a warrior must know the exact moment, the narrow seam, the breathing gap in the revolving wall. Subhadra listens, or at least she tries. It has been a long day. The night breeze is kind. The lamp beside her burns with a low golden flame. Somewhere in the courtyard below, water trickles from a stone spout into a basin of lotus leaves. This is the sort of sound that persuades queens, sages, and overconfident archers alike that closing their eyes for just a moment is perfectly safe. It rarely is. Arjuna goes on, patient and precise, tracing with words the path inward. The child hears him. From within that hidden dark, Abhimanyu learns the rhythm of entry, the pulse of timing, the way to pierce the spinning wheel and pass through its guarded mouth. And then the lesson breaks. Subhadra, soothed by the night and the rise and fall of familiar voices, drifts into sleep before the final part is spoken. The way in reaches the child. The way out does not. That is the thread laid down before his birth. You can feel it already, fine as silk and strong as iron, stretched from this peaceful terrace to a battlefield not yet covered in dust, from a mother's quiet breathing to the crash of chariot wheels, from a secret heard in darkness to a day when all the elders of the earth will look at one radiant boy and ask him to do what grown men cannot. Abhimanyu will be born into splendor. He will grow among heroes and beloved relatives, in halls bright with polished stone and courtyards full of laughter. He will have Krishna for an uncle, Arjuna for a father, Subhadra for a mother, which sounds luxurious, and in many ways it is. The difficulty is that in this family, every dinner conversation can drift from mangoes to celestial weapons without warning. 1 minute, someone is asking for more ghee. The next, a god has arrived, and now everyone has to sit properly. You will see him as a child first, quick-footed, golden-hearted, listening from doorways, running along corridors with the fearless speed that only princes and monkeys truly understand. You will watch him train beneath famous eyes, carrying the brightness of youth in a house built from vows, exiles, rivalries, and love. You will stand beside him when garlands are placed around his neck at his wedding. You will hear the music, smell the incense, feel that brief, tender season when the future still seems willing to be kind. Then dawn will come over Kurukshetra. Arjuna will be drawn away. Drona will arrange the army into the great revolving wheel. The elders will realize too late who among them knows the hidden entrance. And a boy who learned one half of a secret before he was born will climb into his chariot and ride toward the turning mouth of fate. So stay here for a moment longer. The lamps are low. The fan hums. The camp beyond the darkness has gone still. On the terrace, Subhadra sleeps under the stars, one hand over the child within her. Arjuna's voice moves softly through the warm night, speaking of circles, openings, timing, war. And inside the silence, Abhimanyu is listening. Before the boy ever touches a bow, you are standing in that warm dark beginning with him, listening for what reaches him before birth. The war is still far away. Not in truth, perhaps. Seeds have already been planted. Vows have already been made by men with strong jaws and terrible timing. But for this moment, none of that is pressing against the walls. For this moment, the night belongs to a household at ease. You are in Dvaraka. The sea keeps breathing beyond the palace, slow and tireless. Salt hangs in the air. Lamps burn low in long corridors, their flames steady behind carved screens. Somewhere farther in, someone is laughing over a late meal. You catch the smell of warm milk simmered with cardamom, sandalwood smoke, and the faint, clean scent of wet stone cooling after a hot day. You are in the softer world around heroes. That is important. Names like Krishna and Arjuna usually arrive trailing conchs, wheels, flying arrows, and impossible vows. But even such men come in from the evening wind. Even they sit down. Even they loosen arm rings, wash dust from their hands, and ask if there is any more supper. And in that softer world is Subhadra. She moves through these rooms like moonlight with anklets. Krishna's sister, Arjuna's beloved. Soon, a mother. She carries the secret curve of new life beneath silk that gleams blue in lamplight. When she walks, attendants fuss over cushions, over fruit, over whether the night breeze is too cool. Pregnancy turns every palace into a kingdom of advice. One woman says more rest, another says more ghee, a third says fewer stairs. A fourth would probably ban breathing if she could arrange it properly. Subhadra bears all this with the patience of someone deeply loved and very nearly outnumbered. She has grown up in a family where ordinary never quite survives the day. Her brother is Krishna, and that alone means peace will always come with a hidden grin. One never fully relaxes around Krishna because comfort in his presence has a way of becoming revelation by desert. And now Arjuna is here too. Arjuna, who wears greatness a little uneasily when he is indoors. Put him on a chariot, and he becomes bright as lightning. Set him in a polished chamber with women carrying trays and musicians settling their venas, and some part of him still looks ready to apologize for taking up space. Yet around Subhadra, he softens. Around Krishna, he sharpens. Around both together, he becomes something rare, happy. You can feel it in the room before you see them. A courtyard opens to the night. The moon is almost full. White jasmine has climbed the trellis and spilled fragrance over the stone railings. The breeze from the sea reaches in cool fingers past the columns. Bronze lamps circle the terrace, and the light catches on gold, on silk, on the dark curls at Krishna's neck. Krishna reclines with infuriating grace, as if the whole universe has been arranged mainly to support his elbow. Arjuna sits beside him, one knee drawn up, a cup forgotten in his hand. Subhadra rests on cushions nearby, one palm lying over the child within her, as if she is already keeping time with another heartbeat. You are close enough to hear the fabric shift when she leans back, close enough to hear the sea, close enough for the night to feel intimate, like being invited into a family memory no one meant to make famous. Krishna begins it naturally. He has been teasing Arjuna all evening, and Arjuna has been pretending not to enjoy it. That is one of their old games. Krishna has 1,000 old games. Some end in laughter, some end in kingdoms changing hands. It is not always easy to tell which sort you are in. Tonight seems harmless. He asks about battle formations, not like a court lecturer reciting a list, not with dry names stacked one after another. Krishna never speaks that way when he wants to charm a room. He nudges, he coaxes, he lets one thing open into another. He asks Arjuna what pattern is hardest to break, which formation closes like a trap, which one swallows a rushing force and cuts it apart from within. Arjuna, being Arjuna, answers. At first, he resists a little. He says this is hardly music for the evening. He glances at Subhadra's rounded belly and suggests perhaps they spare the unborn child a lecture on organized destruction. Krishna smiles the way only Krishna can smile, with affection and mischief braided together. He points out that children in this family hardly get the luxury of ordinary lullabies. Better the little one hear of chariots than hear of account books. Subhadra laughs. That laugh rings warm against the stone, light as bangles touching. It loosens the room. It tells Arjuna to continue. It tells the night that war may enter in words and still be gentle for a while. Servants withdraw farther into shadow. Somewhere a flute tries a phrase and then falls quiet, as if listening. The moon slides higher. The white stone beneath everyone's feet gives back the day's last stored coolness. And Arjuna, great archer, beloved son, troublesome husband to destiny itself, begins to explain the Chakra Vyuha. He does not call it doom. He describes it the way a master of craft describes a difficult knot, a formation turning within itself, rings moving, closing, shifting like the coils of a serpent or the petals of a flower when wind keeps changing direction. To the eye it seems almost alive. A warrior looking from outside sees openings appear and vanish. What is a gate one heartbeat becomes a wall the next. What was clear ground becomes a lane of spears and wheels. He draws the shape with one finger on the stone between them. You can almost see it there. A line, a curve, another turning path, then another. Concentric movement, guards placed so cunningly that each circle protects the next. Enter badly and you are swallowed. Hesitate and you are crushed from both sides. Charge blindly and the wheel closes behind you, and suddenly the world is all noise and no direction. The oil lamp beside him throws gold over his hand as it moves. Subhadra watches. Her eyes are half-lidded, not from boredom but from comfort. This is her husband speaking of the thing he knows best, not before a court, not before a rival, but before those who love him. His voice has changed. It has gone lower, steadier. There is no boasting in it, only precision. He has lived too close to skill to brag about it. A peacock boasts. A man who can split a reed in windlight explains. Krishna listens with his chin propped in one hand. Every so often, he adds a question, not because he needs the answer, but because he enjoys hearing Arjuna unfold. He asks where the pressure point lies. He asks what happens if cavalry pushes too early. He asks how the lead chariot should turn at the second ring. The questions come smooth as river water, and Arjuna follows them, laying the map open step by step. You feel the strange beauty of it. This is the tenderness at the center of the night. A husband speaking with care, a brother smiling in lamp glow, a pregnant woman listening while the sea breathes beyond the walls. And inside her, unseen, a child receiving rhythm before meaning. because the unborn hear more than people think. In that warm, hidden dark, sound arrives first as pulse, then pattern, the mother's blood, her breath, the rise and fall of voices near her. The little one inside Subhadra does not know words like formation or breach or flanking wing, but he knows cadence. He knows his father's tone when concentration gathers. He knows the playful lilt of his uncle. He knows the deeper music of attention. This is how the lesson begins to enter him. Arjuna explains the first approach. Do not strike the wheel everywhere at once. Watch for the turning seam. There is always a seam, even in a pattern built by masters. A heartbeat where motion makes a weakness. You wait for that moment, the way a hunter waits for reeds to part. Then you drive in fast. No wavering, no courtesy. The point is not to admire the formation. The point is to pierce it before it remembers itself. Krishna nods. Subhadra shifts, one hand going to her side. The child has stirred. She smiles with that surprised smile mothers wear, half wonder and half complaint, as if saying, "There you are again, little prince, kicking during the important part." Arjuna sees it and laughs under his breath. His hand rests lightly over hers for a moment. He says the boy already prefers battle instruction to sleep. Krishna says, that sounds very much like the family curse. Subhadra says, if the family curse also included letting his mother rest, she would be grateful. There it is. A little household joke beneath the moon. The kind that makes destiny seem almost harmless. A servant comes with a tray. Warm milk scented with saffron. Thin rice cakes brushed with ghee. Slices of sweet lime chilled in clay bowls. Krishna steals one before the tray is fully lowered, because of course he does. Subhadra swats lightly at his wrist. Arjuna, for once, gets to look like the more disciplined one, which probably does not happen often enough for his taste. The palace around them settles deeper into night. You hear the sea more clearly now. A bell from some distant shrine. The rustle of palm leaves beyond the walls. The stone is cool through the cloth beneath your hand. Jasmine thickens in the dark until it almost tastes sweet on the air. And Arjuna continues. He describes how the warrior must break the first ring with speed and angle, never letting the enemy close the gap. Once inside, the path narrows. Men will strike from both sides. Chariots will press from the rear. The second opening comes not where it seems, but where the motion pulls inward. Follow the current, cut at the pivot, turn before the enclosure seals. His voice flows like instruction and chant together. You understand how an unborn child might remember this, not as a complete teaching yet, more like a melody tracing circles, the body learning urgency before the mind can name it. The way infants somehow know the sound of one footstep from another in a familiar house. Subhadra leans back farther into her cushions. Pregnancy does this. The body becomes both temple and sleepy rebellion. You may begin the evening alert and elegant, prepared to listen to clever men discuss strategy. Then the baby rolls once. The night breeze turns soft. The milk is warm. The lamps are low. And suddenly, the whole world narrows to one immediate and glorious desire. A nap. She fights it. For a little while, she really does. Her eyes stay on Arjuna. She follows the line he traces on the floor. Once, she even repeats part of the pattern back to him, and he looks delighted that she has caught it. Krishna, seeing this, makes some wicked remark with his eyebrows, if not his mouth, as if to say, Arjuna has finally found a listener who cannot leave the lecture halfway through. But sleep is patient. It begins at the edges. The sea becomes a cradle. The lamps blur. Arjuna's steady explanation, so exact and measured, turns soothing in spite of itself. There is something almost funny in it. The deadliest battlefield geometry in the world has become a bedtime story tonight. Somewhere in the universe, warriors are sharpening weapons. Here, the great secret of entering a whirling battle formation is being delivered to a child through his mother's drowsiness. The night holds tenderness and danger at once. Subhadra's lashes lower, lift, lower again. Arjuna is now speaking of the deeper rings. How, once inside, a warrior must not lose direction. How he must move like an arrow that remembers the bowstring, straight through confusion. Strike, turn, advance. Never let the wheel hold you in place. The formation feeds on hesitation. It loves the man who stops to think at the wrong moment. It closes around uncertainty, like water around a stone. Krishna watches Subhadra as much as he watches Arjuna. A smile touches his mouth, not mocking, fond. He sees sleep claiming her inch by inch and says nothing for now. Why stop a beautiful thing? The night is generous, the moon is high. His sister is comfortable. His friend is talking himself happily into the heart of technical warfare. There are worse ways to spend an evening. You can feel the child move again. Inside the warm dark, the little prince turns toward the voice. Arjuna goes on. He has reached that dangerous middle point in a teacher's pleasure, the place where he forgets time because the subject itself is carrying him. He explains how one might pass the third ring, then the fourth, using timing, wheel turn, bow reach, and relentless forward pressure. His hands move as if they still hold the reins. His shoulders subtly shift as if feeling the sway of a chariot. Even seated, he is half in battle. The unborn child hears all of it. The entrance, the pressure, the rhythm, the first circles opening. Then comes the gap. It happens quietly. No thunder, no omen splitting the sky, no jackal crying in the courtyard. Just a human thing, a small domestic surrender. Subhadra falls asleep. Her head tilts gently to one side. Her breathing deepens. One hand slips from her belly to the cushion. The milk cup rests untouched beside her. The moonlight softens her face until she seems carved from pearl and dusk. Inside her, the child settles too, rocked by her stillness. Arjuna notices a few breaths later. He stops in the middle of explaining the next turn. For an instant, he looks almost offended, which is very unfair. Anyone delivering advanced military instruction to a pregnant woman after supper should prepare for this possibility. Krishna sees the look and nearly laughs aloud. He lifts a hand to quiet him and glances towards Subhadra with exaggerated solemnity, as if some profound cosmic event has occurred. In a way, one has. The room changes. The lesson, which had been bright and flowing, meets the soft wall of sleep and breaks there. Arjuna lowers his voice, then simply lets it go. He says, there is no point continuing. Krishna agrees much too quickly. He says the audience has abandoned the field. Arjuna mutters that this audience was never properly committed to disciplined training. Krishna says the audience is carrying his nephew and may therefore do exactly as she pleases. Arjuna cannot argue with that. No one sensible argues with a sleeping pregnant woman. That is a battle formation no hero enters twice. The two men sit in companionable quiet for a while. This quiet matters almost as much as the unfinished lesson. You are there with them as the night settles over everything. The lamps hiss softly. Somewhere beyond the terrace, a guard's spear butt taps stone in measured rhythm. The sea keeps folding itself against the shore. Krishna pulls a light shawl over Subhadra's feet. Arjuna adjusts the cushion behind her neck with the awkward gentleness of a man who could defeat armies, but still worries he might disturb one sleeping woman. Inside her, the child floats in warmth and half-heard wisdom. He has learned the way in, not the way out. No one says it. How could they? It is just a stopped conversation, a postponed explanation. Tomorrow, perhaps, another evening, another chance. Life in royal houses is full of tomorrows, a festival, a journey, a summons, a ritual, a hunt, a wedding, a messenger at the gate. The days come crowded. The unfinished thing waits politely in a corner, believing itself safe. But some lessons do not return when called. Krishna knows many things, but even he lets this night remain what it is on the surface, a simple family scene. He does not darken it. He does not place his hand on Arjuna's shoulder and speak some grave warning. He only sits with him and watches the moon whitening the courtyard tiles. After a while, Arjuna asks whether Krishna had truly wanted the full explanation. Krishna says he wanted to hear Arjuna teach. That answer lands gently. It always surprises people the ways love appears around Krishna, not always as rescue, sometimes just as attention. He knows his friend's mind is a fine weapon, and he delights in hearing it unsheathed. He knows his sister is happy in this light. He knows a child is listening from somewhere no eye can reach. For a few breaths, the world is exactly balanced. Then the night carries on. Attendants come in on silent feet. One gathers the tray. Another adjusts the lampwick. Someone drapes another cloth over Subhadra's shoulder. No one wakes her. The household has learned reverence around new life. You smell the last of the warm milk, sweet and spiced. You hear silk whisper over stone. A conch far away marks some temple hour, low and rounded, then fades into the sea wind. Arjuna rises at last. Before leaving, he kneels beside Subhadra and rests his hand once more over the child. He says nothing loud. Perhaps he does not need words. The touch itself is a blessing, a promise, a father greeting the son he has not yet seen. Krishna watches him with that unreadable tenderness he wears when affection runs deeper than mischief. Then they go. Subhadra sleeps on, and inside her, Abhimanyu keeps what he has heard. Days pass, then more. The moon changes shape above Dvaraka. Monsoon scents come and go. Courtyards fill with morning parrots and evening lamps. Priests chant in shrine rooms washed with cow dung clay and strewn with flowers. Women grind sandal paste. Wrestlers train in red dust beyond the palace walls. Cooks shout over copper pots large enough to bathe in. Somewhere always there is music. Somewhere always there is counsel. Great houses are like that. Even at rest, they hum. Subhadra moves through these days with the measured grace of late pregnancy. You can see the household changing around her. Cradles are discussed, astrologers consulted, nurses appointed, tiny cloths folded, protective charms tied. Every older woman suddenly remembers a different absolute rule about what a mother should eat, avoid, recite, or never ever under any circumstances look at during an eclipse. Krishna listens to all this with saintly patience for nearly 3 breaths at a time. Then he starts provoking them for sport. He asks one aunt whether the child will emerge holding a mace if she feeds Subhadra too much butter. He asks another whether a heroic prince can be made merely by chanting louder than the neighbors. He inquires with straight face whether anyone has considered that the baby might simply prefer sleeping to conquest. This causes scandalized huffing from exactly the people he hoped to tease, which means the morning has gone very well. Subhadra laughs more easily in these days. Arjuna is not always beside her. A warrior's life has too many roads in it, but when he is there, he is attentive in the careful, practical way of men who love deeply and express it by asking whether the room is too warm, or whether the physician has come, or whether she should sit with her feet raised. Grand passion is one thing. Bringing an extra cushion is another. The second can be just as holy. At night, if the palace is quiet enough, he sometimes speaks again of bows, horses, battle calls, the handling of reins, the reading of opposing lines. Not always formal instruction, sometimes memory, sometimes anecdote. Sometimes one of those stories men tell because they hope their child, hearing from the unseen place, will come into the world already knowing the family music. Subhadra listens, sometimes awake, sometimes drifting, and the child listens always. This is how Abhimanyu is formed before he is held. In the warmth of a mother loved by gods and heroes, in the nearness of Krishna's laughter, in the orbit of Arjuna's skill, in rooms fragrant with sandalwood and milk and sea salt, in a house where the talk is half domestic, half destiny. You stand in that hush and understand something wordless. Fate does not always arrive with drums. Sometimes it comes as a lesson interrupted because someone got sleepy. Sometimes the hinge of a life is no bigger than a mother closing her eyes. The night of the unfinished teaching is not marked in red on any palace calendar. No priest announces it. No herald records it in a booming voice. The moon shines, the sea turns, and everyone assumes there will be time. There is such tenderness in that mistake, and such sorrow waiting inside it. But not yet. For now, stay here. Stay with Subhadra beneath the shawl, breathing slow and easy. Stay with the faint lamp glow on the terrace floor where Arjuna traced the spinning wheel. Stay with Krishna's smile fading into thought as he looks once more at his sleeping sister. Stay with the child floating in the warm dark, carrying a pattern like music. He does not know he will need it. He only knows the sound, a turn, a break, a rush inward, then silence. Beyond the palace, the sea keeps breathing under the stars. The jasmine hangs heavy on the night air. Somewhere in the corridors, footsteps soften and disappear. And deep within that hidden world before birth, the lesson rests unfinished, waiting for the day it will wake. Then the child arrives, and every courtyard around you suddenly has to make room for a boy with far too much lineage and far too much energy. He comes into a family already crowded with vows, weapons, conch shells, and impossible men. And somehow, he is welcomed first as something simpler, a baby. You can feel the whole household soften around him. Silk curtains stir in the sea breeze at Dwaraka. Ghee lamps throw gold across polished floors. Somewhere out beyond the palace walls, waves keep folding themselves against the shore, patient as breath. Inside, in chambers scented with sandalwood and warm milk, Subhadra holds her son. She smiles with the tired, astonished look of a mother who knows she has brought trouble into the world and already loves it fiercely. He is named Abhimanyu. The name moves through halls and courtyards and stables. Nurses murmur it, priests bless it, servants repeat it with fondness after he has knocked over a tray or crawled somewhere he absolutely should not be crawling. Krishna hears it and laughs that soft, knowing laugh of his. Arjuna hears it and stands a little taller, like a man who has suddenly been given a reason to survive every battle still waiting for him. And the boy, for his part, takes to life as if he had somewhere urgent to be. Not walking, running, not listening, investigating, not sleeping, unless exhausted by conquest. You are in one of those palace courtyards at dawn, when the stone is still cool under bare feet and the sky is pale as watered milk. Pigeons shuffle along carved ledges. A servant has just finished drawing a fresh rangoli by the threshold. Then Abhimanyu appears, all bracelets and bright eyes, an unsteady determination, heading directly toward it like a prince launching a military campaign against colored powder. He stamps through the pattern, a tiny disaster. Beautifully done. Subhadra catches him before he can continue his offensive into the lampstand. He twists around in her arms, offended at this interruption to his art. Krishna happens to be passing by. He takes one look at the ruined rangoli, the guilty feet, the furious toddler face, and he begins laughing so hard he has to lean against a pillar. That is one of the great mercies of Abhimanyu's childhood. He is born into greatness, yes, but first he is allowed to be adored. In Dwaraka, he grows beneath sea light. This is not the inland heat of the Kuru plains. This is a city washed in salt wind, coral dawns, and the cry of gulls wheeling above white walls. The smell hits you before sunrise, brine, lotus from inner pools, sesame oil from the kitchens, and incense already smoking in little blue threads before household shrines. Gold glints everywhere, so does mischief, for Abhimanyu is never still for long. He learns the map of the palace by running it, the women's chambers, the audience hall, the terraces open to the sea, the storage rooms where jars of grain stand taller than he does, the stables, which become his favorite almost immediately. Horses understand boys like him. They recognize restlessness as kinship. At first, he can only reach their knees, then their flanks. Then, one day, with alarming confidence and very little permission, he is trying to climb one. A stable hand catches him just as he slides under the belly of a patient mare. Abhimanyu emerges dusty, triumphant, and completely certain that the adults are overreacting. His uncle Balarama hears about it and declares that the boy has sense enough for courage and not yet enough for survival, which is more or less the diagnosis of every heroic child in that family. Balarama takes a liking to him anyway. How could he not? Abhimanyu has his mother's brightness and his father's hunger for skill. He watches everything. If Balarama lifts a mace, the boy stares until someone finds him a stick. If a charioteer tightens reins, Abhimanyu leans close enough to earn 3 sharp warnings and 1 resigned sigh. If Krishna enters a room, the child turns toward him almost at once, as sunflowers turn toward light. Krishna never treats him like decoration. That matters. Some royal children are petted and displayed like jeweled parrots. Not this one. Krishna crouches to his level, shows him shells from the shore, tiny carvings, a feather, a fruit cut open so the child can see the hidden geometry inside. He distracts him when he is hurt, teases him when he is proud, carries him on his hip through palace verandas while discussing matters of state over the boy's head, as if the most natural thing in the world is to balance kingdoms and toddlers at the same time. You can see them at twilight on a sea-facing balcony. The evening breeze is cooler now. Lamps are being lit one by one. The sky is violet, then bronze, then deepening blue. Krishna has Abhimanyu perched beside him, and the boy is asking the kinds of endless questions only children and sages can sustain. Why the moon follows the chariot? Why conches sound different? Why some men wear crowns and others carry them? Why his father is away? Why everyone smiles when they say he is Arjuna's son? Krishna answers most of it. Not all. A wise uncle knows that mystery is part of the education. Arjuna is not always there. That absence settles over parts of Abhimanyu's childhood, like dust after hooves have passed. His father belongs to him, yes, but he also belongs to roads, vows, allies, weapons, and the wide, unfinished business of the world. Even in peaceful years, there are pilgrimages, campaigns, obligations, invitations no king can refuse, and dangers that seem to wait specifically for men like Arjuna. He arrives with dust on his shoulders and stories behind his eyes. Then, too soon, he is gone again. So Abhimanyu learns his father in flashes, a hand adjusting his grip on a toy bow, a voice telling him never to fear the horses, because horses know fear already and do not need help with it. A laugh from the training yard, the smell of leather, sweat, and sandalwood when Arjuna lifts him after returning from travel. There are evenings when the child waits past his usual hour, fighting sleep with heroic stubbornness because he has been promised his father will return by moonrise. You can feel that drowsy palace hush settling in, servants moving softly, lamps low, someone in a distant courtyard playing a slow note on a flute. Subhadra sits with the boy in her lap while he blinks and straightens and blinks again. Then hooves in the outer court. A murmur at the gates. Arjuna arrives. Abhimanyu wakes all at once, as if sleep had only been pretending. He wriggles free and runs. The reunion is never long enough. It never would be. But in a family made of warriors, saints, and men who cannot seem to pass an emergency without leaping into it, children learn to gather joy quickly with both hands. When the Pandavas are together, the boy shines even more. To them, he is not only Arjuna's son, he is the camp's delight. Yudhishthira receives him with grave tenderness, the kind that makes children strangely respectful without knowing why. Bhima tosses him into the air until Subhadra protests, and everyone pretends not to hear her. Nakula teaches him the difference between a horse merely looking beautiful and a horse worth trusting. Sahadeva, patient and observant, shows him small things others miss: how to read an animal's temper from its ears, how to knot a sash properly, how to notice before speaking. And Draupadi watches him with that layered expression women of great households often wear: fondness, caution, memory, and a love that has survived too much to become careless. She has seen courts turn cruel and fortunes shift overnight. She knows children raised among kings are wrapped in silk and danger both. Still, when Abhimanyu runs through the corridors of Indraprastha with his hair half loosened and his upper cloth trailing like a little flag of rebellion, even she has to hide a smile. Indraprastha dazzles him. How could it not? He is still young enough to believe a city can be magic simply because it looks impossible. The halls built by Maya gleam and deceive. Floors reflect like water. Pools look like stone. Stone looks like pools. Pillars rise smooth and cool as moonlight. Gardens overflow with parrots, jasmine, peacocks, and fountains whose spray catches the sun in silver dust. You are walking those corridors with him now, trying not to laugh as he slows at every allusion and then refuses to admit he was fooled by any of them. Once he steps around what he thinks is a pond and bumps directly into polished crystal. Another time, he strides onto what looks like marble and nearly splashes into shallow water with a yelp of outrage so pure that two attendants turn away to hide their smiles. He recovers instantly. He informs everyone nearby that the palace is badly behaved. Then he tries again. That is Abhimanyu all over. Surprise him once, and he comes back at the thing with more attention. The adults around him are legends. This would make some children timid. It makes him curious. He wants to know how Bhima became so strong. Bhima demonstrates by cracking nuts in his fist, and then, because subtlety is not his preferred art form, offering to show the boy how to uproot a small tree. Sensible people prevent this lesson from advancing too far. He wants to know why Yudhishthira is obeyed even when he does not shout. That answer takes longer, and no one can really put it into a child's hands. Still, the boy watches his eldest uncle closely. He notices the stillness, the patience, the way men bring confusion into Yudhishthira's presence and leave with order. He wants to know why Nakula's horses seem to like being brushed by him, and why Sahadeva always appears to know when rain will come. He wants everything, and everyone, in one way or another, begins to teach him, not formally at first. Children of warrior houses learn by absorption, by standing too close, by listening from thresholds, by carrying a toy bow while the real men oil theirs nearby, by watching how elders greet Brahmins, how they sit in assembly, how they mount a chariot, how they eat after ritual, how they control anger in public and sharpen it in private. Etiquette enters the bones this way. So does rank, so does tenderness. Abhimanyu learns to bow to elders, not lazily, but properly. He learns when to speak and when to stay silent, though this second lesson remains somewhat unfinished for years. He learns to touch the feet of those worthy of reverence. He learns the names of visiting kings and the genealogies that stretch behind them like embroidered banners. He learns that a prince must know who is honored first, who sits where, which gift suits which guest, and how a single mistake at court can travel farther than a spear. It is boring work, which means he learns it in bursts. One afternoon in Indraprastha, dressed in small formal silks and enough jewelry to make him jingle when he walks, he is brought into a receiving hall to greet guests. The hall smells of rose water and lamp smoke. Musicians are playing softly near the entrance. Courtiers stand in shining rows. Everything is arranged for dignity. Abhimanyu behaves with perfect grace for nearly 7 minutes. Then he spots a tray of sweets. Royal discipline collapses. He is recovered before full disaster unfolds, but not before Krishna, present for the visit, has seen enough to grin for the rest of the afternoon. Later, he tells Subhadra that the boy's court manners are advancing well, except in the presence of syrup. Subhadra says this is inherited from his father's side. Arjuna objects. No one believes him. Yet childhood does not unfold in simple peace. Even when the halls are bright, a shadow follows this family. Exile-shadowed memory, carried in the voices of adults. The children hear more than they are meant to hear, always. A servant stops speaking when he enters. An elder's face hardens at the mention of Hastinapura. A feast turns quiet when some old insult is remembered. The names of Duryodhana, Karna, Shakuni, Dhritarashtra move through the household like weather reports from a dangerous frontier. Abhimanyu does not understand all of it. Not at first. He only knows that his uncles can laugh until the walls ring and still go silent at certain names. He knows his mother's expression changes when news comes from the Kuru court. He knows there are old wrongs folded into family meals, like bitter leaves hidden under rice. You are with him one monsoon evening as rain drums against carved stone, and the palace smells of wet earth, neem smoke, and hot lentils from the kitchens. The lamps burn lower because of the wind. Abhimanyu is not yet old enough for war talk, but old enough to feel tension. He lingers beyond a curtain while the adults think him gone. Inside, Bhima is pacing. Yudhishthira is calm in the way deep rivers are calm. Arjuna says little, which often means a great deal. Draupadi's voice is steady, though even a child could hear the steel under it. No one says the future plainly. Still, the air tastes of storm in more ways than one. The boy slips away before he is found. Later, in bed, he asks Subhadra why grown men who can defeat armies cannot simply make peace at dinner. Subhadra smooths his hair and tells him what mothers tell children when truth is too large for night, that some knots are tied long before one pair of hands reaches them. He thinks about that for a while, then asks if he can have his own horse. That too is childhood. It makes room for dread and delight in the same hour. As he grows, the two houses shape him differently. Dwaraka gives him warmth, polish, and ease with splendor. There he learns laughter around sharp minds. There he learns that strength can wear yellow silk and still terrify kings. There he learns from Krishna that attention is power, and from Balarama that footing matters before force. The sea teaches rhythm. The city teaches confidence. Indraprastha gives him royal bearing and the sense of belonging to a larger claim. There, the air carries dust from roads, incense from shrines, the smell of horses from long lines of stables, and the low thunder of governance itself. Kings arrive, judgments are made, plans spread over maps. In those halls, he sees what it means to hold a kingdom, not merely to enjoy one. And between those worlds, he becomes very good at being loved by many people at once. This does wonders for his confidence. It does less for his obedience. By the time he is old enough for structured lessons, his teachers discover a fact that will surprise no one who has watched him since infancy. Abhimanyu learns quickly and tests boundaries even faster. Give him a rule, and he asks why. Give him a technique, and he tries to improve it before mastering it. Tell him not to climb a moving chariot. Well, then everyone has to run. You are out in the practice grounds now, where the noon sun burns white and hard over packed earth. Dust rises warm around the ankles. A line of horses flicks their tails beneath the shade cloths. Leather reins smell rich and oiled. Young attendants are carrying practice bows, wooden swords, shields rimmed with hide. Abhimanyu, not yet a man, already moves with the spring-loaded confidence of one who assumes his body will answer every command. He is learning reins first. This is wise. Horses, unlike flattery, give honest feedback. He adores them. The feel of a good neck under his palm, the silken rope slide of mane through his fingers, the hot, living scent of animal breath, the thunder in miniature when a colt tosses its head and stamps. Nakula teaches him patience around them, and patience is harder for Abhimanyu than bravery. He wants to leap from admiration to mastery in one bright bound. The horse refuses. Excellent teacher. Again and again, he must slow his hands, quiet his breathing, stop trying to conquer, and begin trying to understand. Some days he returns dusty and sulking because the mare responded better to the stable boy than to a prince with famous blood. Some days he comes back grinning because, for one glorious stretch, everything aligned. The pressure of knee, movement of wrist, shift of weight, and the horse answered as if reading his mind. He begins to ride, then to race, then to push a little too hard and come off in a tumble that knocks the breath from him and leaves grit in his mouth. He sits up shocked, offended, and trying not to cry because 3 grooms and 1 uncle are watching. Bhima helps him up, claps the dust from his shoulders hard enough to nearly topple him again, and tells him falling is merely the earth reminding princes that it exists. This cheers him more than comfort would have. Archery comes next, or rather, comes officially next. In truth, it has been stalking him since infancy. How could it not? He is Arjuna's son. Bows hang in memory before they hang in his hands. The first real string bites him, not deeply, just enough. His fingers smart, his forearm hums. The bow feels alive and stubborn, not at all like the elegant extension of a hero's will he had imagined while watching from a distance. Arjuna is there that day, correcting the angle of elbow, the set of shoulder, the place where breath must settle before release. He does not praise too quickly. That is another gift. The boy must earn his ease. So he does, morning after morning, target after target, the thump of blunt arrows into straw, the smell of sun-baked earth, sweat, and bamboo shafts, the sting in the fingers fading into callus, the body learning what the mind cannot rush. Abhimanyu likes improvement almost as much as he likes applause. Almost. When he begins to hit reliably, he glows. When he misses, he hates missing cleanly with his whole face. Once, after sending 3 arrows just wide of the mark, he glares at the target as if it has committed a personal insult. Arjuna sees this and tells him, with very dry amusement, that the target is not plotting against him. Krishna, hearing of it later, says that in this family, one can never be too careful. The boy develops other skills too. Sword drills, chariot etiquette, how to stand in assembly without fidgeting, how to greet elders even when bored, how to conceal boredom, an art at which many princes fail spectacularly. He is not always graceful at these lessons. There are mornings when he wants the thrill of the yard and receives instead a long discourse on alliances, lineage, and ceremonial obligations. To a child, this feels like being asked to trade mangoes for paperwork. Still, he sits, mostly. If one foot jiggles, someone presses it still with a look. At night, he is rewarded with stories. Those long, breathing stories that shape children even more than instruction does. Stories of the forest years. Stories of strange sages and stranger vows. Stories of Arjuna winning Draupadi. Stories of Bhima and the Rakshasas. Stories of how Krishna once walked into a tyrant's hall and made power itself blink. Abhimanyu lies half-curled against cushions while lamps waver low and perfumed smoke winds lazily upward. Outside, maybe rain taps at leaves. Maybe sea wind rattles a bronze bell. Maybe the camp beyond the palace walls has gone quiet, except for a sentry's spear butt touching stone. He listens with that fierce stillness children achieve only when imagination has taken them whole. His family fills the stories like mountains. How is he supposed to grow up ordinary among such people? He does not. But he does grow sweetly for a while. There are games in courtyards, mock battles with cousins and attendants drafted unwillingly into service, races under colonnades until somebody breaks decorum, and something expensive, nearly breaks with it. Festival days when he is scrubbed, anointed, dressed in fresh cloth, and instructed to remain clean for at least the opening prayers. This instruction rarely survives the hour. Holy colors find him. Flower petals stick in his hair. During Janmashtami celebrations, he becomes convinced every butter pot exists partly to test his climbing ability. In this, too, he has inherited the correct uncle. Krishna encourages only enough mischief to keep life from becoming stiff, not enough to let it become stupid. Usually, one evening during a family gathering in Dwaraka, Abhimanyu and a few other children discover a conch shell large enough to require 2 hands. They take turns trying to sound it. What emerges is less a warrior's call than a distressed water buffalo. The noise rolls down the corridor, through one courtyard, and into a room where Balarama and several elders are discussing serious matters. Silence follows, then the unmistakable thud of many adult footsteps. The children scatter like startled partridges. Abhimanyu ducks behind Krishna, who does not exactly shield him so much as make the whole scene impossible to punish with proper severity. Balarama arrives, tries to remain stern, fails after one look at the guilty faces, and orders the next attempt to be done outdoors, where the heavens can suffer instead of the household. That night, the sea breeze smells of salt and night-blooming flowers. The moon lays a broken silver path across dark water. Somewhere in the palace, a child is still awake, whispering battle sounds into his pillow. Years gather quietly. The baby weight leaves his limbs. The roundness of childhood sharpens into something bright and fine-edged. His stride lengthens. His gaze steadies. His hands, once grabbing at horse-tack and bowstrings like treasures, begin to use them with intention. And still, there is youth in him. Thank the gods. He laughs easily. He loves deeply. He wants to prove himself, yes, but he still turns toward affection as naturally as flame turns upward. He has not yet learned the heaviness older men carry in the chest. Not fully. The world has touched him, but not closed around him. You can stand beside him in those golden in-between years and feel it. The warmth of evening stone after sunset, the smell of jasmine braided into garlands for some household ritual, the rustle of silk as Subhadra passes, the scrape of bow against practice rack, the murmur of uncles planning, always planning, and Abhimanyu among them, not a child anymore, not yet claimed by the full cost of manhood, listening, learning, smiling, burning gently from within, a prince of 2 houses, sea-born in memory, court-raised in splendor, camp-loved by warriors, shaped by absences and returns. Krishna's nephew, Arjuna's son, Subhadra's bright-eyed child, the one everyone expects much from, though he is still young enough to race the wind for no reason other than joy. Not yet the boy in the wheel of war, not yet the youth surrounded by veterans and fate. For now, stay here, in the courtyards, in the stables, in the long lamplit evenings where stories are told before sleep. A conch sounds far off across the dark. Horses shift in their stalls. The sea, or perhaps only memory of the sea, keeps breathing against the edges of night. And somewhere, under all those famous names, one young heartbeat moves steadily onward, gathering skill, love, and the last easy light before the sky begins to change. A childhood in royal courtyards can only last so long. Sooner or later, someone puts a bow in your hands. Even the sun seems expected to notice. That season comes quietly, not with drums, not with a proclamation shouted through polished halls. It begins at dawn, when the palace lamps are still smoking and the training ground is cool for one blessed hour before the heat rises. Abhimanyu walks out with his hair tied back badly, still more prince than warrior, still carrying the softness of youth in his face. He is trying very hard to look serious. The bow is taller than he wants it to be. You can feel the morning under your feet if you stand there with him. Packed earth, a little dampness from night air, the smell of dust, horses, sesame oil, and cut bamboo from the target stands. Somewhere farther off, a conch sounds from a temple by the water. Not war, just morning. Arjuna watches his son pick up the bow. That matters, because when Arjuna watches, the air changes a little. Men stand straighter. Stable boys stop pretending not to stare. Even the old trainers who have seen everything begin smoothing their beards and acting as if they have somewhere urgent to be. Great warriors do that to a place. They turn ordinary ground into examination ground. Abhimanyu feels it too. He plants his feet, lifts the bow, and immediately discovers that a fine heroic posture is not the same thing as balance. The bow tips, he overcorrects. For one noble instant, he seems likely to wrestle it like an offended goat. Krishna, who has come only to watch and absolutely not to interfere, smiles in the shade like a man enjoying excellent entertainment before breakfast. Arjuna does not smile, not yet. He steps forward and adjusts the bow with small, exact touches. One shoulder lowered, one elbow lifted, wrist turned, chin eased down, breath slowed. He says little. He never needs many words when he is showing something with his own body. Abhimanyu draws. The string bites his fingers sharply enough to change his face for half a heartbeat. There it is, the first real lesson. Archery is beautiful from a distance. Up close, it introduces itself with pain. He releases too soon. The arrow slaps into the earth a few strides ahead, where it stands trembling with all the dignity of a failed idea. One of the stable boys makes a strangled sound that might be a cough and might be laughter, attempting a very risky disguise. Krishna looks at the sky, innocent as a lotus in a painting. Abhimanyu goes red to the ears. Arjuna only tells him to pick it up and do it again. So he does, again, 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 until the fingers redden and the shoulders burn, and the princes watching from the side begin to understand that skill is not made of applause. It is made of repetition, of blisters, of the maddening distance between what the mind sees and what the body can actually do. You stand there in the warming light and see the change begin, not a grand transformation. Smaller than that, a prince learning to stay with discomfort instead of flinching away from it. By midday, the ground is hot enough to breathe heat through sandals. The bowstring leaves a stripe on his fingers. Sweat runs down the side of his neck and darkens the collar of his training cloth. Arjuna finally nods once, which, from him, is practically a festival. That evening, Subhadra rubs oil into her son's hands. He tries to look unconcerned. He fails. His fingers sting. His shoulders ache. His pride is in even worse condition than either of them. He tells her the bow is badly made, or the target too far, or perhaps the sun itself was unhelpful. Subhadra listens with the patience of a mother who knows exactly how many kings and heroes have sat before her making excuses for sore arms. Then she kisses his forehead and tells him he has his father's stubbornness. This is not entirely comforting. Days become pattern, dawn dust, bowstring bite, sweat drying white on the cloth. Dawn drills, running with armor straps slapping against his ribs. Sword practice until the wrists learn their own music. Spear work in the long bright yard, where crows hop between shadow and light, bold as tax collectors. Chariot lessons in fields, where wheels throw dust in curling fans, and horses snort foam into the air. The trainers change depending on the lesson, but the shadows around him remain the same. Arjuna for archery. Krishna for everything that does not fit neatly into a lesson. Bhima for strength and the cheerful possibility of being flattened by affection. Yudhishthira for composure. Nakula and Sahadeva for the arts that make battle less clumsy and life less ugly. And over all of it, family expectation, hanging in the air like incense smoke. Sweet, heavy, inescapable. When Bhima trains him, subtlety leaves the room. Bhima believes in food, force, and doing things properly, which often means loudly. He teaches mace work with immense seriousness and the kind of casual power that makes younger men reconsider all their life choices. The mace itself feels less like a weapon and more like a stubborn piece of mountain. Abhimanyu swings. The mace drags him half a step sideways. Bhima catches him before he topples and laughs so hard the pigeons on the wall lift in outrage. Then he resets the boy's stance and tells him the weapon must become part of his movement, not an argument with it. It sounds wise. It is also difficult. After several attempts, Abhimanyu lands one clean turn, then another. Then a strike that rattles the post hard enough to make his palms sing. Bhima roars approval as if the city has been saved. Abhimanyu tries not to glow under it. You can hear it all from the edge of the yard. Wood on wood, men grunting, bangles clinking as servants bring water. The low mutter of older warriors placing bets on how many days before the prince bruises something important. With sword practice, the trouble is speed. He has plenty of it. Youth usually does. But speed without judgment is just a very pretty route to embarrassment. Arjuna teaches economy, a smaller movement, a cleaner turn. Do not strike where the enemy was. Strike where he is arriving. Do not waste anger. It wastes you back. Abhimanyu listens, mostly. Then he tries brilliance. It happens on a bright afternoon with several cousins watching. He has improved enough to feel dangerous, which is one of the classic signs of a boy about to be corrected by reality. He spins too broadly, reaches too eagerly, and leaves his side open. Arjuna's practice blade taps him, gentle but undeniable, right at the ribs. Done. Finished. Lesson received. The watch-in boys make the appreciative noise of spectators who are very happy not to be the one corrected. Abhimanyu straightens, breathes, and pretends this was all part of a larger strategy no one else could possibly understand. Krishna, leaning against a carved pillar nearby, asks whether that strategy involved dying elegantly. Even Arjuna smiles at that. The awkwardness of youth comes and goes like summer wind. One morning, Abhimanyu rides beautifully, low and easy with the horse, reins alive in his fingers. By afternoon, he dismounts too quickly in front of half the household and catches his own ankle in the stirrup. He does not fall far, but far enough. Just enough to grant every groom in the yard a memory to cherish forever. The horse, innocent creature, turns its head as if to check whether this rider is entirely finished. Abhimanyu gets up with all the dignity available to someone who has just been betrayed by leather straps and adolescence. Krishna advises him not to declare victory over horses too early. Horses, he says, enjoy revenge. That evening, the tale has already reached the women's quarters. Subhadra hears it from two different maids, each improving the performance. Draupadi hears it and laughs with one hand over her mouth, then tells Abhimanyu that every warrior requires one foolish public moment before manhood can proceed. Unfortunately for him, he has chosen an extremely memorable one. He groans and tries to disappear into a plate of sweet rice, but training does not care about embarrassment. It returns the next morning with the same clean light and the same merciless patience. Arjuna begins taking him into more difficult exercises, moving targets, shooting from a running chariot, loose sand underfoot, wind from the river, noise, confusion, distraction. A warrior must place the mind where the body can obey it. That is the lesson. Easy enough to hear. Harder when 4 targets are released at once, and one trainer is shouting, and another is striking shields together to wreck your concentration. You stand there near the boundary ropes and feel the whole place alive. Arrows hiss, wheels grind, horses stamp. The smell of hot leather rises with the sun. Dust collects in the throat. Sweat salts the lips. Abhimanyu's hair comes loose and sticks to his temple. He draws, turns, releases, misses one, takes the next, misses again, corrects, learns. Days turn to months. The misses grow fewer. One morning he shoots while the chariot sways over ruts and clipped earth. 3 arrows leave in a breath. One strikes the painted circle. One splits the cane frame. One cuts a hanging garland from the post so neatly it drops like a surrendering snake. The yard goes quiet for just a beat. Arjuna looks at the target, then at his son. That quiet is better than praise. Abhimanyu feels it. You can almost see the moment entering him, settling somewhere deep. Not pride, exactly. Something steadier. The first private knowledge that he may truly belong among these men. And still the comparisons follow him. He is Arjuna's son, Krishna's nephew, Subhadra's jewel, the darling of the Pandavas, the child everyone lifted, fed, teased, blessed, and watched. There is affection in all of it. Also weight. Every compliment comes with an echo. His hands are like Arjuna's. His eyes are like Subhadra's. His smile is Krishna's family's smile. His courage is Bhima's kind. His courtesy is Yudhishthira's. A young man can disappear inside so much inheritance if he is not careful. Sometimes, after training, he walks alone, not far, just beyond the main yard, where neem trees throw thin shadows and the noise softens. There he practices by himself. No uncles, no cousins, no approving nods from veterans with scarred arms. Just a target, a bow, his breath, and the sound of arrows landing in wood. You watch him there and understand something changing. He's beginning to train, not because they are watching, because he is. Krishna notices first. Of course he does. One evening, after the air has cooled and the sky has turned copper over the city walls, Krishna finds him by the river where the practice field gives way to reeds. Abhimanyu has a bow across his knees, and that restless look young men get when they are too old to be children and not yet fully settled inside themselves. Krishna sits beside him. No lecture, no grand unveiling. That is not his way with those he loves best. He tells the boy smaller things. That battle is never as tidy as training yards. That a warrior must see what is in front of him, not what he wishes were there. That courage without steadiness burns too fast. That fame is noisy and skill is quiet. Abhimanyu listens. The river moves beside them, dark and slow, carrying bits of reflected fire from the evening lamps. Frogs start their rough music in the reeds. Somewhere behind them, cooks are finishing the night meal, and the smell of ghee and cumin wanders into the cooling air. Krishna tells him too that there will come moments when everyone around him is older, louder, more experienced, more certain. In those moments, he must not shrink, nor must he rush merely to prove he can stand among them. A hard lesson for youth, that one. Restraint feels too much like invisibility. Abhimanyu says little. He rarely wastes words when something matters, but the next day he changes, not all at once, in details. He stops throwing every ounce of force into every strike. He watches longer before moving. He begins to read opponents instead of charging straight at their strength. In mock combat, he lets one boastful cousin tire himself with flashy attacks, then slips neatly inside his guard and ends the bout with a touch to the chest. Clean, quick, almost impolite in its efficiency. Bhima sees it and laughs so hard he nearly spills his drink. Nakula approves the footwork. Sahadeva, who misses very little, says nothing at all, which in him is sometimes the sharpest form of admiration. Yudhishthira's praise comes softly. He tells the boy that self-command is rarer than talent. Abhimanyu holds on to that longer than the louder compliments. Then comes the chariot phase. This is where the prince begins to look frighteningly natural. It helps that movement suits him. He has grown taller. The softness in his face is thinning into clarity. Sun has browned his arms. His shoulders are settling. When he takes the reins, something in him wakes fully. Horseflesh, speed, the shifting line between control and wildness. He loves it all. Arjuna trains him hard, how to stand with knees loose and spine steady while wheels slam over uneven ground, how to read a horse's ears before panic becomes trouble, how to turn sharply without spilling the archer beside you, how to fight while moving and move while fighting, how to think in arcs, distances, openings. Once, during a difficult turn around a post set in broken ground, Abhimanyu cuts too close. The wheel hits a rut. The chariot jolts sideways. For a breath, it seems ready to topple. He corrects instinctively. Reins pull, weight shifts, left foot braces, right hand releases and gathers. The horses answer. The chariot rights itself and races on in a spray of dust. Even Arjuna's expression changes. It is only a blink, but you catch it if you are watching closely. Surprise, then satisfaction. Later he tells Subhadra that the boy recovered like someone born to it. Subhadra says she knows. There are ceremonial tests too, because royal life can never simply let a person improve in peace. There must be witnesses, standards, public measurements of worth. One day, a group of nobles and elders gathers to watch the younger warriors display their progress. Silk rustles under the awnings. Gold flashes at wrists and throats. Servants move with trays of cool water and betel leaves. The heat lies over everything like a hand. Abhimanyu hates public displays before they begin. Not because he fears them exactly, because he knows what everyone wants. They want Arjuna again, but younger. They want a second sunrise. A familiar miracle with fresh skin. He walks into the yard with that knowledge on his back. You can feel the dust lift around his ankles, hear the murmurs under the awning, smell sandalwood from the nobles mixed with horse sweat and hot rope. This is the moment when a young man discovers whether he can bear expectation without letting it twist his hands. He begins with archery. Stationary target, easy. Moving target, easy enough. Then the difficult sequence. 3 releases while turning, one low, one high, one by reflected sight from a polished tray set in the sun. Showmanship, yes, but also control. He does not rush. That is the first surprise. He lets the crowd settle into their own impatience, breathes, draws, releases. The first arrow lands true. The second follows while he is still turning. The third, by reflection, takes the hanging mark with a clean little crack that carries through the yard. The nobles clap. Bhima bellows. Krishna's eyes shine. Arjuna remains still, but his face has gone very calm, which for him means his heart is loud. Then comes spear-throwing, sword work, mounted drills. Abhimanyu is not perfect. Perfect men live mostly in songs. He slips once, recovers quickly, and does not let the slip become the center of the day. That too is growth. At the end, he salutes the elders. He has given them what they wanted, and something else besides. Not Arjuna repeated. Abhimanyu. The difference is subtle but real. A different rhythm, a quicker brightness, less inward than his father, less enigmatic than Krishna, less crushing than Bhima. He has a directness to him, a clean forward energy that belongs to no one else in the family. That night, the camp talks about him. Old soldiers remark on his hands. Young warriors imitate his turn with the bow and get it wrong. Women in the inner chambers smile over the memory of him as a child, with sticky sweets on his face, and marvel at how suddenly boys become men when no one is looking. Subhadra sits a little longer by the lamp before sleeping. Arjuna says very little, but he asks for the boy to join him earlier the next morning. Praise from some fathers is spoken. From Arjuna, it often arrives as harder lessons. So the lessons deepen. No longer only how to strike, how to decide. Arjuna begins setting him impossible-looking problems in mock battle. 2 attackers at once, then 3, a blocked path, a broken axle, a horse panicking, an ally exposed, an enemy feinting retreat, target, danger, confusion, speed, not enough time, never enough time. At first, Abhimanyu treats each challenge like a contest of bravery. That works until it doesn't. In one exercise, he pursues too eagerly and leaves the rear of his small formation open. Another trainee slips through and tags the standard he was meant to guard. Failure, clear as noon. Abhimanyu is furious with himself. Arjuna does not soften it. He tells him that brilliance is useless if it forgets the whole field. A warrior cannot chase glory and protect his people at the same time if his eyes are only on one shining point. The words sting because they are true. You stand near enough to see the boy take them in. Jaw tight, breath steadying, anger burning down into resolve. It is a good sign. Some youths only resent correction. Better ones are remade by it. Krishna's guidance moves differently. He teaches through timing, through stories told on walks, through watching Abhimanyu fail in one way and arranging the next day so he notices what he missed. He will ask lightly what the boy saw before he loosed an arrow, or why he chose speed over position, or whether he noticed the fear in a horse before it bolted. Such questions sound casual. They are not casual at all. Bit by bit, Abhimanyu learns that war is not only arms and impact. It is reading movement, mood, fracture, opening, reading men. And because life is not made entirely of noble progress, there are still ridiculous moments. One afternoon, determined to impress everyone by mounting a chariot in full armor with a clean leap, he catches the edge with his shin and lands in a tangle that sounds like a basket of brass pots thrown down temple steps. Bhima nearly chokes, laughing. Nakula, politely studies the horizon. Sahadeva closes his eyes for one patient moment, as if asking the stars why gifted people insist on being idiots in public. Abhimanyu gets up, salutes no one, and climbs aboard the normal way. Even warriors need these humiliations. They keep the vanity from becoming unbearable. By now the younger fighters seek him out. Not because he is eldest. He is not. Not because he is easiest to beat. He is very much not. Because he is generous in practice. Fierce, but not cruel. Competitive, but not poisoned by it. He will correct a grip, reset a stance, share a trick of balance, then try very hard to defeat you in the next round. This makes him loved. It also makes him dangerous. Loved men are followed. One evening, after a long day's drills, he joins his uncles for supper in a pavilion open to the night. Oil lamps shiver in the breeze. Rice steams in bronze bowls. The scent of roasted grain and cardamom softens the edges of the day. Fireflies move over the dark garden beyond. Bhima retells some small training mishap with terrible accuracy and excellent exaggeration. Nakula improves the horse's part in the tale. Sahadeva quietly inserts the detail that makes everyone laugh hardest. Yudhishthira watches Abhimanyu laugh with them and grows very still in that way gentlemen sometimes do when they are loving someone and fearing for them at once. Arjuna sits beside his son, not touching him, but near. Krishna watches them all. No one says what the night holds in the future. No one speaks of wheels within wheels, of battle formations, of days already moving toward them from far off. For now, there is food, family, lamplight, and the low music of people who belong to one another. You sit with them in that warm dark and feel the strange sweetness of it. The making of a warrior is never only in the yard, it is here too. In who waits for him, in whose eyes brighten when he enters, in whose hands pass him bread. Before sleep, Abhimanyu returns once more to the practice ground, just for a little while. The moon is up, the targets are pale ghosts in the silver light. The earth has released some of its heat at last. Night insects sing in the grass. From far away comes the soft wash of river water against stone. He takes up the bow alone, draws, releases. The arrow flies in a clean whisper and lands. Again, again. No crowd now, no comparison, no uncle's booming approval, no father's measuring silence, only the pull of the string, the breath, the night, the growing certainty in his own hands. This is how it happens. A boy admired for belonging to great men begins, little by little, to become a great man others will remember by name. And under the moon, with dust cooling around his bare ankles and the scent of jasmine drifting over the wall, Abhimanyu keeps practicing until the stars blur softly above him and the whole sleeping world seems to listen. And just when the young warrior begins to look less like a promise and more like a man, life opens a season of music around you before the drums begin. It begins in Virata city, under banners that move lazily in the warm air. The long trouble of exile has passed. The year of hiding is over. The Pandavas have stepped back into their names. Armor is being polished again. Messengers come and go. Kings are counting favors. But for a little while, before all that hardens, the palace opens its courtyards for marriage. Princess Uttara is to be wed, not to Arjuna, though King Virata once imagined that match. No, Arjuna, who taught her dance while disguised and hidden, smiles and turns gently aside. He says she is like a daughter to him. Let her come instead to Abhimanyu, his son, bright and brave and of the right age. with spring still in his face, and everyone around them feels at once that this is good, more than good, sweet. You can feel it in the way the servants move faster, suddenly light-footed, in the way old women begin counting auspicious dates before anyone has asked them to, in the way the kitchens wake before dawn. Rice is washed in broad brass bowls, cardamom is crushed, ghee melts to gold. The smell of roasting grain and sugared milk drifts through the palace halls and hangs in the curtains. A wedding means life is still moving forward. A wedding means the world has not yet become only strategy. Abhimanyu arrives in a city already half in festival. Fresh mango leaves hang over doorways. Garlands of jasmine and marigold spill from trays and arms and hooks and windows, like the whole place has been persuaded to bloom indoors. The musicians are tuning in one courtyard, arguing in another, and eating sweets in both. Someone is always looking for a missing anklet. Someone else is always blaming a cousin. It is, in other words, a proper family event. And this is not a small family. The Yadavas arrive with gleaming ornaments and sea city confidence. The Pandavas arrive with the weight of long injustice, briefly set down for joy. Krishna is there. When Krishna is anywhere, stillness and mischief somehow appear together. Balarama comes broad-shouldered and magnificent, like a plough given royal jewelry. Subhadra glows with that difficult mixture only mothers know, pride, tenderness, and a worry she keeps folding small and tucking away. You stand in the outer courtyard as they enter, and the air is thick with sandalwood, horse sweat, flower pollen, and lamp smoke. Silk brushes against silk. Gold catches firelight. Somewhere a conch sounds, long and low, and the sound rolls along the stone like water. Abhimanyu is dressed as a bridegroom now, not the dust-covered boy from the training grounds, not the prince racing through corridors with half-tied hair, not Arjuna's son in everyone's imagination. A bridegroom. His hair is oiled and bound. His forehead is marked. Fine cloth falls in pale folds from his shoulders, and jewels rest against his neck with a weight he pretends not to notice. He carries it all well, mostly, but you are close enough to see the youth still flickering under the polish. He stands tall, yes. He has his father's line of shoulder, his mother's brightness, Krishna's easy grace somewhere around the eyes. But when the older women look too long and smile too knowingly, he becomes very interested in anything else. A pillar, a horse, a priest's spoon, anything. This is one of the small mercies of weddings. Even heroes can be made shy by aunties. His uncles do not help. Bhima laughs loud enough to disturb birds in the rafters and claps him on the back as if testing whether the groom will remain upright. Nakula and Sahadeva make him endure careful grooming and then stare at him like craftsmen admiring their work. Yudhishthira's blessing is warm and solemn, but even he cannot entirely hide his smile. Krishna watches all this with that look of his, as though he sees the whole string of days at once and has chosen, kindly, to dwell on this bright one. Arjuna says less than the others. He watches his son. That is enough. The wedding rites begin slowly, as good rites do, with washing and tying and blessing and waiting. The priests arrange vessels of water, bowls of grain, darba grass, flowers, clarified butter. Fire waits in its place, not yet fed. Women circle the bride with lamps. Men discuss auspicious moments with great seriousness while standing in everyone's way. The afternoon heat sits over the city like a hand, heavy but not cruel. Then evening begins to loosen it. A breeze slips into the courtyards. Lamps are lit one by one. Copper plates ring softly. Incense rises in blue threads. You can smell jasmine most strongly now. Then Uttara appears. For a heartbeat, the whole place hushes. You hear bracelets settle. You smell jasmine and lamp smoke. Even the air seems to wait. She is young, graceful, and radiant with the careful splendor built around brides in royal houses. Her silks are rich, her ornaments delicate and bright, but it is not the gold you notice first. It is the stillness she carries into the room, the shy downward glance, the small effort to walk evenly under so many eyes, the henna dark on her hands, the flowers woven through her hair, the faint tremor in the fingers she keeps gathered together. This is not a warrior entering a field. This is a girl crossing the narrow bridge between one life and another. And Abhimanyu, for all his training, all his speed with a bow, all his skill with horses and steel, looks at her as though the palace has changed shape around him, which it has. For a little while, he is simply a young man seeing his bride. The sounds return gradually. Bells, flutes, the rustle of silk, someone sniffing back tears already, much too early, and earning an irritated glance from an older relative who has not yet begun crying and refuses to be outpaced. King Virata is full of pride and relief. His queen cannot stop looking at her daughter. Arjuna's old season in disguise lingers strangely in the background of it all. Once he taught this princess to dance in a hidden court, moving to rhythms while concealing his warrior's self. Now he gives her, not to himself, but to his son. Time in royal houses is never simple. It loops, it braids, it smiles with one face while carrying another underneath. Still, tonight is kind. The rites move forward. Garlands are exchanged. Hands are joined. The fire is lit. Its glow warms their faces as priestly voices rise and fall in measured cadence. Sanskrit rolls through the hall like a river over stone. Not rushed, not sharp, ancient, steady, carrying everyone with it. Offerings are placed in the flame. The ghee crackles softly. Smoke curls upward, scented with sweetness and wood. You sit close enough to feel the fire's breath on your cheek. Abhimanyu and Uttara circle the sacred flame, step by step, vow by vow. The hem of cloth whispers over stone. Bracelets chime. The light touches gold, flower petals, dark hair, lowered lashes. In that slow circling, everything seems briefly ordered. Earth beneath, fire between, family around. The future still standing politely outside, not yet invited in. Then comes blessing after blessing. May there be long years. May there be strength. May there be children. May there be prosperity. May the household be full of laughter. May the path ahead be gentle. No one at a wedding ever asks for less. And why would they? The elders place their hopes on the couple the way they place rice in their hands. Generously, repeatedly, sometimes beyond what two young people can comfortably carry. Abhimanyu receives it all with composure that comes and goes. Uttara bends her head and accepts each blessing like someone being wrapped, layer by layer, in expectation. Around them, the family softens. This is what joy does in hard times. It loosens the jaw. It lowers the shoulders. It lets people become themselves again instead of their positions. Bhima eats with open happiness and argues cheerfully over sweets, as if kingdoms do not exist. Nakula notices every detail of dress and horse and perfume, naturally. Sahadeva notices the stars. Yudhishthira listens to priests, counselors, and musicians with equal attention, because that is the kind of man he is. Draupadi watches the bride with deep affection, seeing perhaps both tenderness and danger in the same glance. Subhadra cannot stop adjusting something near Uttara's veil, then Abhimanyu's collar, then nothing at all. Mothers need tasks on days like this. Krishna moves through the celebration as easily as wind through lamp flame. He says a few words here, smiles there, eases attention before it forms, redirects a boast before it grows horns. Children trail him. Kings lean toward him. Women trust him. Men who should know better think they understand what he is doing. They do not. But tonight, even mystery wears flowers. Music gathers after the rites, drums, flutes, veena strings, the bright click of small cymbals. Dancers turn in lamplight. Young men show off. Young women pretend not to notice and notice everything. The air grows thick with perfume, warm milk, fried sweets, and the faint mineral smell of water carried in from the evening cool. You walk through the decorated halls, and everything feels touched with gold. In one room, cousins laugh over old embarrassments. In another, old warriors remember younger bodies. In a corner, two ministers murmur over troop movements and marriage gifts in the same breath. In the courtyard, girls gather flower petals in their laps and whisper about the bridegroom's face. This is how storms are waited for in royal houses, not with silence, with more lamps. Abhimanyu and Uttara get moments of privacy only in the way great households allow privacy, which is to say, not much. A curtain, a shaded veranda, a pause at the edge of a garden while three attendants stare resolutely elsewhere. But even those small spaces matter. You can imagine one such evening after the louder celebrations have softened. The moon has risen. The stone underfoot has cooled. Somewhere beyond the garden wall, a night bird calls once and then again. The scent of tuberose has deepened, almost too sweet. Lamps burn low in niches. Their little flames tremble whenever the breeze comes. Abhimanyu is easier here. No uncles thundering with affection, no priests instructing him where to stand, no ornaments being adjusted by half the household. Just a young husband, still half astonished to find himself one, speaking more quietly now. He tells Uttara things, not in grand declarations, but in the ordinary way intimacy begins. Small stories from his childhood. Mischief in Dwaraka. How Bhima can identify sweets from 3 courtyards away. How Nakula speaks to horses as if expecting courtly replies. How Krishna always seems amused a moment before anyone else understands why. How Arjuna can look severe during training and then secretly be proud for days over a single well-made shot. And Uttara listens. Then she tells him things too. Palace habits, little grievances. Which maid will always know the truth? Which corridor stays cool in summer? Which teacher was strict and which one snored through music lessons? The small map of her own life, offered piece by piece. This is the tender work, not vows before fire. After, you feel it most in the quietness. Abhimanyu has been raised among men whose names shake kingdoms. He has seen exile, return, vows, hidden identities, preparations for war. He knows what is coming, at least in outline. Every prince does. But marriage invites a different imagination. A house, shared meals, familiar routines. Laughter repeated enough times to become home. Maybe children with lotus-dark eyes. Maybe years. He is young enough to believe in future seasons. That is part of what makes him beautiful. Days pass in brightness, gifts arrive, more relatives come. Horses are admired, chariots inspected, jewels exchanged, and alliances strengthened, under the cover of celebration. You can hear politics in the side chambers if you drift too near. Matsya and Pandava, Yadava loyalties, the temper of kings, the stubbornness of Hastinapura, names of allies spoken over trays of fruit, but the central courtyard still belongs to festivity. At dawn, women draw fresh rangoli patterns in colored powders at the thresholds. By noon, the patterns are smudged by feet and remade. By evening, the lamps turn everything forgiving. The city outside hums with rumor and commerce and wedding leftovers. Children chase each other wearing half-wilted garlands. Dogs nap under carts. Brahmins recite blessings for anyone standing still long enough to receive them. The season feels almost ordinary. That is the dangerous sweetness of it. You stand on a balcony one late afternoon and watch the sky turn copper over Virata's rooftops. Pigeons swirl, settle, rise again. From the stables comes the rich smell of hay, leather, and animal warmth. From the kitchens, cumin and frying batter. From the temple court, bell notes carrying into dusk. Below, Abhimanyu crosses the yard with Uttara beside him. No armor, no war banner. He's laughing at something she has said. It is such a simple sight, a husband and wife walking together before dinner. And because it is simple, it catches in the heart. Around them, older eyes are always watching, often with affection, sometimes with memory. The elders know how quickly such seasons pass. They have lived through too much not to know it. Bhishma is far away in Hastinapura, bound as ever to a throne that has forgotten tenderness. Drona sharpens skill into duty. Duryodhana tightens his pride around himself like armor. Shakuni still breathes. Karna still burns with old humiliations. In many courts, men are measuring ambition against kinship and finding kinship inconvenient. But in Virata, for a little while longer, flute music still wins the evening. There are omens, because of course there are. A jackal cries at an odd hour beyond the city wall. A lamp gutters during a blessing and must be relit. One morning, Sahadeva studies the sky too long. Another evening, the horses stamp uneasily in their stalls, though no storm has yet broken. A hawk wheels over the palace roof and vanishes westward. People notice, then they continue. What else can they do? No family cancels joy because fate has a dark expression. The wise make offerings. The practical send more messengers. The young go on being young. Abhimanyu spends time with his father in these days too. Not always in formal training. Sometimes simply walking. Sometimes standing over weapon racks while saying very little. Sometimes inspecting chariots, testing bowstrings, speaking of horses, routes, timing, the 1,000 useful things warriors discuss when larger fears are hovering nearby. Arjuna looks at his son now with a gaze divided in two. Pride in one half, foreknowledge in the other. But he does not cast shadow over the wedding light. He lets the boy, no, the young man, have this season. Gives advice where advice is needed. Blesses where blessing is needed. Keeps the harder thoughts banked like coals. Subhadra cannot bank them so easily. Mothers hear distant thunder sooner. There are moments when she watches Abhimanyu and Uttara together, and joy rises in her face so purely that it almost hides the ache beneath. Almost. Then she will touch her son's cheek, as if he were still small enough to scoop into her arms, and he will laugh softly and let her, because a bridegroom may wear jewels and command horses. But to his mother, he remains the child who once slept with his fist closed around her sari edge. You can feel the softness of those moments like folded cotton. Even Krishna, who carries vast things lightly, grows more tender in this season. He speaks to Uttara with kindness that steadies her. He rests a hand on Abhimanyu's shoulder now and then, not ceremonially, simply because affection has hands. When he smiles at the young couple, there is delight in it, real delight. Whatever else he sees ahead, he does not withhold that. That matters. Nights deepen. The wedding lamps are fewer now. The palace settles earlier. Guests begin to depart in streams of silk, dust, blessing, and gossip. Courtyards that rang with song return to quieter sounds. Sweeping, distant prayer, the splash of water poured from brass lotas onto stone. Flower garlands begin to dry at the edges. Petals gather in corners. Festive cloths are folded away. The extraordinary starts putting on the clothes of the everyday. And the everyday, for a brief time, is beautiful. Uttara learns Abhimanyu's rhythms when he rises, how long he lingers with weapons, which foods he reaches for first, how he goes silent when listening inward. He learns hers as well. Which songs she hums without noticing, how she tucks a loose strand of hair behind one ear when thinking, which temple lamp she prefers to light herself at dusk. These are not the things bards usually sing, but they are the things life is made of. You are there in the quiet chamber one evening when rain threatens but does not come. The air is heavy, smelling of dust and wet leaves waiting to happen. A lamp burns near the wall. Outside, somewhere in the dark, peacocks complain like minor officials. Uttara is seated near the window, and Abhimanyu, not yet called away, rests at peace in the stillness beside her. No one says it aloud. How little time remains. That is mercy too. At last, the calls begin to sharpen. More envoys, more counsel, more names of kings declared, with either approval or concern. Armor no longer gleams only for ceremony. Chariot wheels are greased not for parade, but for distance. Stable boys are suddenly important men. Smiths do not sleep enough. The words dharma and claim and duty return to every serious mouth. The season of music does not end all at once. It thins. One evening, there is laughter under the lamps. The next, half the men present are studying maps. Still, when Abhimanyu looks at Uttara, the gentleness remains. When Uttara looks at him, the future still stands before them, wearing ordinary colors, householder colors, domestic colors, not yet ash and vow and battlefield dust. That is where this bright season rests, on the edge, in the last calm light before the sky changes. And if you listen closely, with the palace gone, mostly quiet, and the wind moving through the courtyard banners, you can hear both worlds at once. A bride's anklets fading down a corridor, a distant conch from the practice grounds, the soft crackle of a lamp, the iron murmur of men preparing for war. Abhimanyu lives between those sounds for a little while. Young husband, young warrior, beloved son, beloved bridegroom. And in Virata's palace, under the fragrance of jasmine and the patient gaze of the stars, he is allowed, for one last luminous season, to be simply happy. But no feast, no garland, no father's praise can hold back the morning when the wheel begins to turn. Dawn comes to Kurukshetra, grey and dry. The light is thin at first, like ash brushed across the rim of the world. Campfires have burned low. Horses stamp and toss their heads. Somewhere a conch sounds, deep and hollow, and the answering blasts roll over the plain like waves striking stone. You can smell damp canvas, key smoke, leather, old iron, and the faint sweetness of crushed kusa grass under sandals. This is the 13th day, and everyone wakes with the feeling that something has shifted in the night. The Kaurava camp had not slept peacefully. Not really. Men had muttered over armor straps and oil lamps. The Trigartas, still burning with their oath against Arjuna, had prepared themselves like men walking into fire on purpose. They had bathed, they had made offerings, they had bound themselves to a promise that would not loosen. Either Arjuna would fall that day, or they would. It is a dramatic way to organize your morning. Before sunrise, the challenge comes. Loud, public, impossible to ignore. Messengers ride fast through the dust with the news that the Samsaptakas have called for Arjuna again. They have sworn to fight him to the end. They are waiting on the far edge of the field, shouting his name into the wind. Arjuna hears. Of course he hears. How could he not? The man was born to respond to that kind of thing. A challenge thrown in his face lands on him the way sparks land on dry cotton. He cannot leave it lying there. Krishna knows it too. He stands at the chariot with the reins in hand, dark as a rain cloud before monsoon. He watches the eastern horizon brighten. The horses stamp white breath into the cool hour. Arjuna climbs aboard with the easy grace of long practice. But there is a strain under it now. Too many days, too many friends already gone. Too much war packed into a single human chest. Still, the challenge has been given, and Arjuna goes. The chariot wheels bite into the earth. Krishna lifts the reins. The four horses surge forward. Dust rises behind them in a pale gold plume, and the greatest archer in the world is drawn away from the center of the battle by men who have made themselves bait and vow and weapon all at once. You watch that chariot vanish into distance, and something in you wants to call it back. Back in the Kaurava lines, Drona sees the opening. He has been waiting for this. All these days he has tried and failed to seize Yudhishthira while Arjuna guarded him. Drona knows his pupil too well, so the old teacher does what only the truly dangerous can do. He turns patience into strategy. He orders the formation. At first, it is only movement, standards shifting, drums beating new patterns, elephants veering into place with a slow, earth-shaking obedience. Chariots wheel inward and outward, cavalry fans along the flanks. From above, if there had been some hawk blessed with a mind for war, it would have seen the shape unfolding like a great spinning flower, or a whirlpool, or the inside of a storm, the chakra vyuha, layer upon layer, a rotating labyrinth of men, banners, wheels, tusks, bows, and iron. It is beautiful in the way lightning is beautiful from a safe veranda. It is terrible in the way lightning is terrible when you are standing in the field. Word spreads fast through the Pandava camp, too fast and not fast enough. Yudhishthira mounts his chariot and stares toward the advancing formation as soldiers rush around him, tightening harnesses and passing bundles of arrows. Bhima squints into the distance with that heavy, restless fury that lives in him like a second heartbeat. Satyaki curses. Drishtadyumna recognizes the pattern and feels his stomach harden. Drona has shaped the wheel, and Arjuna is gone. The realization moves through the leaders in a single silent pulse. Who can break it? Who can pierce the turning rings before Drona closes them around Yudhishthira like a fist? The answers are few, too few. Krishna is with Arjuna. Arjuna is far away. Pradyumna is not here. There are only scattered names and half chances, and each one dies as quickly as it is spoken. Then all eyes turn toward one chariot, toward one young warrior, Abhimanyu. He is there already armored for battle. radiant in the morning light, standing beside his horses while a charioteer checks the axle pins. He is not a child, not exactly. He has a warrior's shoulders now, a warrior's arms, a warrior's discipline. But youth still clings to him in the brightness of his face, in the speed with which he moves, in the clear fire of his eyes before war has had time to turn the mold. He looks, in that moment, like dawn decided to wear armor. Light catches on his cuirass. Fresh oil sharpens the smell of the bowstring. You can hear the metal rings of his cuirass being fastened. You can hear the leather creak as he pulls his arm guards tight. The smell of fresh oil on the bowstring rises sharp and clean. Yudhishthira comes to him with urgency plain on his face. There is no time for gentle phrasing now, no time for royal softness. The king asks what he must ask. He asks whether Abhimanyu knows how to break the Chakravyuha. Abhimanyu does. He learned the entrance before he ever saw the sun. That old half-finished lesson, heard while resting under his mother's heart, returns now with merciless clarity. He knows the moving gap. He knows the rhythm of entry. He knows how to strike the wheel where it opens for one breath and closes the next, but not the way out. He says it plainly. He can break in. He cannot promise to return. The words land among the Pandavas like stones dropped into still water. No one has room for shock. War does not allow a proper pause for that. There is only the terrible practicality of the next decision. The formation is advancing. If it is not broken, Drona reaches Yudhishthira. If Yudhishthira is taken, the day may end the war, so they tell him they will follow close behind. Bhima will guard his rear. Satyaki will be there. Drishtadhyumna too. The Panchalas, the Kakayas, the princes of Matsya. Once Abhimanyu opens the way, the elders will pour in after him and keep him from being isolated. That is the plan. War produces a great many plans that last less than an hour. Abhimanyu listens. He bows his head to Yudhishthira. He salutes Bhima and the others. There is no trembling in him, no visible hesitation. Maybe the hesitation is somewhere deeper, hidden, where only a mother or a wife could hear it. But on the outside, he is all steadiness. He tells them he will do it. What else would he say? That he would rather go back to Uttara's chamber, where the lamps burned low and the jasmine hung over the doorway. That he would rather hear Subhadra fuss over him one more time. That he would rather wait for his father to return and let the older men untangle their own disaster. That is not the world this morning has given him. So he takes up his bow. His chariot rolls forward. You are standing near enough to hear the horses snort, to feel the vibration of the wheels through the ground. Dust rises warm against your ankles. Somewhere above all the human sound, vultures are already circling in slow, patient loops. They know their business. The Pandava conches answer one another. Bhima's roar cuts across the field, and Abhimanyu drives toward the turning wheel. Ahead of him, the Chakravyuha revolves with a dreadful elegance. Standards rise and sink. Elephant heads sway. Shield lines fold and unfold. It is not a wall, but a machine. It breathes. It turns. It invites error. Drona stands at one moving gate like a priest of destruction, white beard flowing, bow already in hand. Around him are kings and princes, ranks within ranks, each layer built to delay, divide, and swallow. Abhimanyu does not slow. This is the thing about the very young and the very brave. Sometimes they are the same person. He watches the wheel, counts the rhythm, measures the opening. His bow rises. The first arrows leave his string in a silver blur, so fast the eye almost gives up trying to follow them. Men in the outer ring fall back. A standard dips. A gap opens no wider than a held breath. He drives straight into it. The first layer breaks. Behind him, Bhima lunges forward with his own chariot, great and thunderous, eager to widen the breach. Satyaki comes hard on one side, Drishtadyumna on the other. For one flashing instant it seems it might work exactly as promised. Then Jayadratha arrives. He does not come alone, of course. No one in this war ever does anything alone if unfair help is available. He comes with the force of a boon coiled around him, a gift from Shiva that grants him for one day the power to hold back the Pandavas, all except Arjuna, and Arjuna is not here. Jayadratha plants himself at the mouth of the breach like a bolt shot through a door. Bhima crashes against him and is checked. Satyaki is forced back. Drishtadyumna cannot get through. Warriors collide in a storm of horses and wheels and arrows. The opening narrows, shudders, closes. Abhimanyu is inside, alone. You feel it before he fully does, that absence behind him, the strange hollow where support should be. The air changes, sound changes. Outside the formation, the battle is wide and scattered, but inside the wheel, everything is compressed. Ring presses against ring. Chariots sweep past close enough for spear points to flash at eye level. Elephant bells jangle madly. Drivers shout. Hooves tear up the ground and leave dust hanging in the heat like gauze. The smell is stronger here. Sweat, churned mud, hot leather, horse foam, the smoky tang of arrows burning through the air. Abhimanyu does what he was born and trained to do. He keeps moving. The first inner ring comes at him fast. Warriors close from the left and right, thinking youth can be frightened by noise and numbers. They learn otherwise. His bow bends into a circle. Arrows spill from him in an unbroken stream. One prince falls from his chariot. Another drops his reins. Horses rear. A banner snaps and collapses. The ring stutters. He drives through. That is the real secret of the Chakravyuha. Once inside, hesitation is poison. Stop, and it seals around you. Move, and for a few breaths, the machine must adjust. So he moves. He fights like Arjuna's son. Yes, everyone sees that. The line of the shoulders, the speed of the hand, the impossible timing. But there is something else too, something sharper, less polished, a bright recklessness that belongs only to Abhimanyu. Arjuna in youth may have looked like a polished blade. Abhimanyu looks like fire-finding dry grass. Somewhere in the Kaurava ranks, men begin saying his name to one another with alarm, not as a boy now, as a danger. Drona sees him cutting through the formation and feels two truths at once. Pride, because this is the son of his greatest pupil, and cold necessity, because if the boy is not stopped, the whole design may fail. So the old teacher turns his attention inward. Again, the wheel shifts. Again, ranks close. Chariots rush to intercept. Princes who had expected a manageable morning suddenly find themselves in front of a storm, wearing gold armor. Abhimanyu meets them all. He brings down chariot after chariot. He shatters bows before they can fully rise. He strikes standard bearers and drivers and shield men with such speed that one blow seems to arrive, wearing the mask of 10. The inner rings tremble. You are in there with him now. You can hear the hum of his bowstring, sharp as a plucked wire. You can feel the jolting floor of the chariot under your feet. Dust coats the tongue. Sweat slips beneath the collar of armor. The sun has climbed higher, and the heat has begun its long occupation of every living thing. He sees Drona ahead and shoots. He sees Kripa sweeping in from the side and turns him back. He sees Karna, radiant and fierce, and checks him too, forcing him to yield space. He sees princes of Kosala, of Avanti, of Gandhara, of Kalinga. Names blur in the motion. Standards flash, jewels on helmets catch the sun and vanish again in dust. One by one, they come forward with the confidence of men protected by numbers. One by one, they are driven back with growing disbelief. For a while, and it is a real while, not merely a poetic breath, Abhimanyu dominates the inside of the formation. He makes seasoned men uneasy. He makes veterans remember they have sons. Outside, the Pandavas are raging at the blocked entrance. Bhima hammers at Jayadratha like thunder striking a gate. Satyaki tries again and again to force passage. Drishtadyumna fires until his fingers burn. But the boon holds. Jayadratha, who on another day might not stand before them so long, becomes, for this one cursed span of daylight, a wall. Dust swallows everything. The cries of drivers and elephants merge into one ceaseless roar. Yudhishthira hears reports and cannot remain still. He shifts his chariot again and again, trying to judge where the wheel may open. He sends forces here, then there. Nothing. The formation keeps turning. Every attempt to break through meets resistance already waiting. And Abhimanyu goes deeper. This is where courage becomes loneliness. The outer sounds fade behind the pressure of the next circle. The faces around him are all enemy faces now. No familiar banner at his shoulder. No uncle's shout on the wind. No reassuring flash of Bhima's mace. Only ring after ring, each one harder than the last. Still, he does not turn back. Perhaps he thinks the others are just behind him and will arrive in the next breath. Perhaps he knows they are not. Perhaps a part of him has always known that the lesson heard in the womb was pointing here. To this narrowing path, no one else could walk for him. His horses are lathered now, flecked white at the chest. Their flanks shine. The charioteer works them brilliantly, cutting left at impossible moments, wheeling right just before impact, finding space where there should be none. Good charioteers deserve songs too, but mostly they get dust and danger and very little poetry. The wheel compresses again. Duryodhana himself comes into Abhimanyu's path with fierce guards around him. The Kuru king's son is glittering in mail, anger already hot in him. He had expected the formation to crush the Pandavas, not to be split by a youth with bright eyes and no beard worth discussing. Abhimanyu strikes his guard hard, breaks through, and sends such a storm of arrows at Duryodhana that the king's son is forced into sudden defense. For a moment, panic ripples outward. If Duryodhana falls inside his own carefully guarded formation, the day will become something else entirely. Drona sees this and rushes to protect him. Others rush too. Karna, Kripa, Ashwatthama, Kritavarman, Brihadbala. More and more of the great warriors draw inward around Abhimanyu, no longer pretending this is a simple containment. It has become an emergency. You can feel the ring tightening. The air itself seems smaller, and yet the boy at the center keeps shining. He moves through shafts of sunlight and dust like something the battlefield cannot quite believe it has produced. His arrows flicker. His standard whips in the wind. Every time the Kauravas think they have closed around him, he cuts a road through the closure and surges onward. Men call to one another. Signals rise. Drums alter. The machine reforms. It is war, yes. It is also adults trying very hard not to be embarrassed by one teenager. There is almost something absurd in it. Almost. But the absurdity has teeth. Brihadbala, king of Kosala, rides against him with all the dignity a king can gather under pressure. He does not last. Abhimanyu's arrows find him, and he falls from the fight, his royal ornaments bright against the churned earth. Another warrior down, another ring disturbed. Karna attacks again. Abhimanyu answers him so fiercely that even Karna must retreat a pace. Ashwatthama comes in with wrath burning, and he too is checked. Kripa, seasoned and terrible, tests him and meets a defense quick enough to sting. Everywhere Abhimanyu turns, a veteran is waiting. Everywhere he turns, he gives them trouble. You are breathing with him now, short, focused, dust in the throat, the wrist beginning to ache from the unending pull and release, the shoulders burning beneath the armor, the small bruises forming where string kisses skin again and again, sweat running down the spine, heat collecting under the helmet, and beyond all of it, the simple, terrible fact: no one has reached him. The Kauravas know this too. They know time is changing shape around them. As long as he has chariot, bow, horses, and motion, he remains dangerous, more than dangerous, disruptive. He is not only surviving, he is tearing honor and geometry and expectation to pieces, so their resolve hardens. Drona gives instructions, not in speeches, not with dramatic flourishes, just fast battlefield commands, practical and cold. Break the bow, strike the horses, cut the support, bring down the chariot. Stop treating him as a prince, to be challenged one by one. Treat him as a fire to be smothered from all sides. This is how the day darkens. Outside the wheel, Bhima still fights like a storm denied entry. He breaks chariots, he fells elephants, he roars until his throat is raw. Yudhishthira hears his sounds and hopes they are closer than they are. Satyaki tries another gap and is turned back. Men fall in heaps at the entrance, while the formation keeps its cruel secret in the center. Jayadratha holds. The sun climbs higher. Inside, Abhimanyu senses the change in the enemy around him. The courtesy of sequence begins to dissolve. The old form of warrior against warrior, one before another, starts to blur. More attacks come at once, from different angles, with less patience for reputation. This is the moment when even a hero can feel the world tilt. He still fights magnificently. He breaks another bow. He fells another prince. He drives his chariot over ground so crowded with shattered standards and scattered armor that the wheels jolt and lurch. The horses scream and recover. The charioteer yanks them through. A spear flashes from one side. Abhimanyu cuts it in mid-flight. An arrow storm descends. He answers with his own and opens a pocket of air. Karna comes close enough to see his face clearly now. Not as rumor, not as lineage, as a living young man, fierce and beautiful and already ringed by danger. Karna strikes. Others strike with him. Drona's net is closing. The smell of hot metal is thick now. The dust tastes bitter. Sunlight beats on the top of the helmet until it seems to sink through the bronze. You can almost hear, under all the battlefield noise, the memory of a different sound. Subhadra listening in the night. Arjuna explaining with patient confidence. The way in. Only the way in. Abhimanyu cuts through another cluster of warriors, and for one brief instant, a little space opens around him, like the eye of a storm. He stands in the chariot, chest rising, bow still singing, and all around him the great Mahabharatas circle at a distance, measured in fear and calculation. He is very young, he is very alone, he is magnificent. Then the circle closes again. The attacks come together now. Drona, pressing from one side, Karna from another, Kripa and Ashwathama and Kritavarman and others hemming him in. Each strike not meant for glory now, but for exhaustion, for damage, for attrition, for that dull, grim kind of battlefield work that cares nothing for fairness and everything for result. Abhimanyu answers each one as best he can, and for a while, that best is astonishing. He cuts Drona's bow, he wounds Ashwathama, he shakes Karna, he sends shafts flashing so quick and bright that the space around his chariot seems woven with light. But no youth, however radiant, can spend himself forever against a ring that never stops renewing. You can feel the strain building, the horses are tiring, the wheel is not. Still, he presses inward, as if some part of him refuses the idea that this maze could be anything but conquerable if he simply keeps striking hard enough. And perhaps that refusal is the purest thing on the field that day. Outside, in another quarter of the world that is still somehow the same battlefield, Arjuna is far away among the Samsaptakas, fighting his own sea of enemies, not knowing yet what shape the day has taken behind him. His arrows blaze across another horizon. His chariot wheels carve another stretch of dust. Every moment he spends there is a moment the wheel turns here. Kurukshetra is large enough for two tragedies at once. Back in the heart of the formation, Abhimanyu drives against yet another ring. He breaks it, or almost breaks it, enough that men reel and standards dip, and for one flickering second, you think perhaps the impossible might actually happen. Perhaps he will emerge from the far side of the wheel, laughing with dust on his face, and everyone will tell this story for generations, as the day a young lion embarrassed an army. War does not always permit such endings. The ring closes behind him more tightly than before. And still deeper ahead, stronger warriors are waiting. The noise becomes a kind of weather. Drums, conchis, the scream of axle against axle, the constant hiss of arrows, elephant bells shaking against enormous necks, the neighing of frightened horses, men calling names that vanish instantly in the wind. Your skin feels coated with dust and heat. Your mouth is dry. Your heart has been beating too fast for too long. This is the 13th day. This is the spinning heart of it. And inside that turning wheel, Abhimanyu still stands, bow in hand, golden and relentless, making the gathered strength of kings labor for every step. He has already gone farther than anyone thought possible. He has already torn honor open simply by refusing to be less than what he is. He has already made the elders afraid, but the circles keep tightening. The support does not come. The old men of war, trapped between admiration and necessity, draw nearer with colder eyes. And Abhimanyu, son of Arjuna, husband of Uttara, child who learned the entrance before birth, drives on into the narrowing maze as the day burns brighter above him and the world behind him falls away. He knows the way in. Now you are with him in the path the womb never taught him, and the whole field seems to lean closer. Inside the spinning formation, the air feels different. Outside, Kurukshetra is a battlefield. Dust, banners, chariots, men shouting themselves hoarse. But in here, ring after ring, it feels like being inside some huge turning machine. The lines open and close. Standards rise and vanish. Horses scream through foam. Arrows hum so thick they seem to stitch the daylight into cloth. And Abhimanyu keeps moving. You can almost feel the heat of him from where you stand in imagination beside that torn chariot rail. He is young, yes, too young, But youth has its own terrible splendor. It does not know how to hesitate for long. It flashes forward. It believes the next opening will appear if it runs hard enough. So he runs hard enough. His bow is singing. That is the first thing. Not merely bending, not merely striking, singing. The Gandharva drums and conchis from this morning feel very far away now. What remains is the taut snap of string, the hard hiss of shafts, the rattle of armor, the iron breath of war. Dust coats his curls. Sweat darkens the cloth at his chest. Gold on his arms catches the broken sun whenever he turns. Around him, older warriors close in and recoil and close again. A prince who should still be hearing wedding songs is making veterans step back. He drives forward through men who thought themselves immovable. Chariots tilt, standards splinter, horses veer wide at the last instant, eyes rolling white. Wherever his arrows fall, the wheel of the formation stutters. Not stops, never stops, but stutters, enough to feel human for one breath. Then another ring closes. Outside those tightening circles, his uncles are still trying to break through. Bhima with his storm heart, Yudhishthira with worry clawing under his armor, the twins striking like bared blades. Satyaki somewhere in the surge. All of them held back, Jayadratha blocking, delaying, buying doom one moment at a time. But Abhimanyu cannot live on outside hope. In here, he has only what is in his hands. He looses another stream of arrows and drives at the next gap before it seals. You can smell horse sweat and leather now, hot and sour under the sweeter scent of sandal from crushed garlands, still hanging on some warrior's standard. The wheels grind over trampled flowers. Morning offerings are now part of the mud. This is war. It takes everything into itself. He does not look back. That, more than anything, is what makes the heart ache. He does not look back because he still fights like someone certain his people are coming. His father taught him momentum. Krishna taught him poise. The Pandavas taught him what it means to be loved by a whole camp. Somewhere in him, all that confidence still burns. If he keeps the path open, they will reach him. If he goes far enough, they will be right behind him. But the path has already closed. No one tells him in time. The great elders around him know it. They see the sealing rings. They know the boy is alone. And still they press inward, not one at a time, not in the clean old manner sung about by bards, but together. War has become impatient with beauty. Abhimanyu answers impatience with brilliance. He bends, rises, turns. A shaft comes at his brow. He cuts it in flight. Another takes his crest. He laughs through gritted teeth and answers with three of his own. One finds a standard. One finds a bow. One finds pride. Even now, there is something almost outrageous in him. A glow. A prince's refusal to become ordinary under pressure. You can see why people loved him. He was one of those rare beings who made effort look like joy. Then the world narrows. A rain of arrows falls on him from many sides at once. His charioteer strains the reins, trying to turn with too little room. The horses lather and stamp and rear. Wood cracks. Somewhere near the axle, a blow lands heavy enough to shake the whole frame. Another, then another. This is not the honorable exchange of matching skill under open sky. This is enclosure, compression. The old rules fraying like thread in wet hands. Abhimanyu keeps answering. He cuts one bow, then a second, then sends shafts toward the hands that would seize another. He strikes at faces, banners, harness, anything that buys a blink of space. The rhythm becomes savage and graceful at once. Draw, release, turn, strike. Duck, rise, strike again. You are there with him now, inside the hot circle of effort. Dust gets into your mouth. The sun, which was high and merciless, has begun its slow westward lean. Light comes slanting through the haze, copper and strange. Every metal edge flashes and then goes dull again. The field smells of split bamboo, churned earth, sweat, and the faint ghee scent from offerings burned at dawn. This is the hour when shadows lengthen, and then his bow is cut. It happens fast, too fast for ceremony. One moment the string is alive under his fingers. The next, a shaft strikes with cruel precision, and the great bow jerks apart. Music stops. Silence rushes in for half a heartbeat, though the battle is still roaring. That is the sound you remember. Not noise, its absence. His hand comes back empty. For any ordinary warrior, that would be the end. A boy on a damaged chariot, ringed by masters, weapon broken. The afternoon would simply close over him like water over a stone. But Abhimanyu is Arjuna's son and Subhadra's child, and Krishna's sister's beloved boy. He has too much lineage in him to surrender neatly. He snatches another bow. Before he can settle it, that one is cut too. A third. Cut. The men around him have understood something ugly. As long as he is allowed a weapon and a breath, he is still dangerous. So they strip each breath as it comes. His horses go down next, not in some long scene. War does not offer that kind of courtesy. A rush of missiles, a wild lurch, harness snapping. The chariot dips, groans, lists hard to one side. One horse folds, then another, and the whole shining vehicle that carried him inward through the Chakravyuha shudders like a living thing struck in the chest. The charioteer falls. Now the prince stands amid wreckage. You can feel the battlefield pause around that image. Not truly pause, nothing so kind, but pause in the mind. Golden youth, broken car, dust in the westering light, ringed by men with every advantage except radiance. He reaches for sword and shield. Of course he does. He leaps down from the ruined chariot with the quickness of someone who has practiced dismounts 1,000 times on quiet grounds where uncles watched and nodded. Those training yards are gone now. No one is nodding. Still, the body remembers what the heart learned in easier days. His feet hit earth. The ground is warm through the soles, packed by thousands of wheels and hooves. Grit sprays at his ankles. He raises shield, sword flashes. For one vivid instant, he looks almost playful in his speed, like a prince in a tournament refusing to lose before supper. Then he goes into them. The sword work is close, too close after the long range of archery. Shield ringing, blade turning, a step left, a cut upward, a shoulder twist. Men draw back from him, startled that he is somehow fiercer on foot. There is no room for grand sweeps, only the quick, hard craft of survival. Yet he makes even that look bright. You smell hot metal now, scorched leather, dust thick enough to taste. A shaft strikes his shield and stays there, quivering. Another glances off the rim. Another takes the sword from near his hand, not by strength, but by relentless ruin. Blade broken, shield hacked. The circle tightens again, so he takes up a mace. The thing is heavy enough to drag another man's shoulder from its socket. In Abhimanyu's grip, it becomes weather. He swings. A chariot pole snaps. A horse shrinks back in terror. Men scatter from the arc of it. Armor dents. Pride shatters. The son of Arjuna is no longer a prince at the center of a clever formation. He is a storm trying to breathe. And storms do not ask permission. For a little while, terrible and glorious, he holds them away. You can almost hear Bhima in that swing, Arjuna in the precision, Krishna in the fearless timing. But beneath all borrowed echoes is Abhimanyu himself, unmistakable now. Not a reflection, not a promise. The thing fulfilled. This young warrior, in the worst place on earth, has become exactly what his life was racing toward. That is part of the sorrow. He becomes fully himself only as the world closes to take him. A great blow lands against him from the side. Another from the front. The mace slips. He recovers it, strikes again. Someone's chariot wheel cracks under the weight of the hit. Someone else falls back stunned. But many hands mean many chances. What one man cannot do, 6 can attempt. What 6 fail to do, 10 can continue. The ring of masters does not tire of being dishonorable. The mace is broken from his grasp. Now there should be nothing left. No chariot, no horses, no bow, no sword, no shield, no mace. And still he does not stop. He seizes a wheel, not metaphorically, not poetically. A chariot wheel, wrenched from the wreckage, its spokes bent, its rim clotted with dust. He lifts it with both hands, breath heaving, curls plastered to his temples. For one strange instant, he looks almost like a young Vishnu in some roadside shrine, halo in his hands. Except this halo is broken wood and iron, hot with dust. And this god is tired. You see him there, and your whole chest tightens. Because what is left to a warrior when every proper weapon is gone? Whatever the world has not yet managed to take, he turns the wheel into a barrier, into a striking edge, into sheer refusal. Arrows thud into it, spears glance away. He rushes with it, surprising even the men who surround him. The absurdity of it would be almost funny anywhere else. On another day, in another courtyard, Bhima might have laughed himself breathless, telling the tale. Look at the boy, he would have said. Give him a pot lid, and he'll challenge a kingdom. But no one is laughing now. The light has turned amber. Dust swims in it like smoke above incense. The cries of distant men come muffled, as if heard through walls. Inside the innermost circle, everything is immediate and unreal at once. Every heartbeat is large. Every breath stings. Abhimanyu rushes one side of the ring, and they recoil. He rushes another, and they fall back there too. Not because they have become noble, because courage, when it burns this poorly, frightens people. It reminds them of what they have lost. It exposes every compromise. This boy with a broken wheel is making seasoned kings uncomfortable in their own armor, and that cannot be allowed to stand. So they close again. A shaft takes the wheel from his hands. Another cracks a spoke. Another shivers the rim. It falls away, useless. Dust rises where it lands. Evening light catches the jagged edge once, then lets it go. He's bare-handed for one breath. Then he snatches up whatever lies near. A broken shaft, a fragment of yoke, a piece of wreckage. It no longer matters. Every object within reach becomes one more second purchased, one more refusal, one more blazing proof that spirit can outlast equipment for a while. But only for a while. You can feel the fatigue in him now, not fear, fatigue. His shoulders rise harder with each breath. His steps, still fast, have the slightest drag. Sweat runs down his neck under the armor. Dust has made a pale mask over the bronze of his skin. The ornaments of a prince have become the weight of a hunted man. Even radiance needs lungs. Even glory lives inside flesh. And flesh has limits. Somewhere far beyond these circles, the sun is moving lower. Somewhere beyond them, in another part of the battlefield, Arjuna is not yet back. Somewhere beyond them, Uttara is not here to see this, and thank every god for that mercy. Somewhere beyond them, Subhadra has no idea that the lesson interrupted in her womb has reached its last brutal line. Inside the wheel, the line is ending. The warriors around him begin to sense it in the old animal way men sense weather. They tighten, advance together. The shower of missiles grows denser. The ground around him is littered with broken gear, fallen standards, snapped shafts, torn cloth, ornaments dulled by dirt. A prince's bright world has been reduced to fragments, yet he still stands in the middle of it, head high. There is such dignity in that. No pleading, no backward scramble, no searching for witness. He has already offered everything he has. He will offer what remains. That is all. You stand there with him in imagination and hear the sounds sharpen, the whine of arrows, the drumming hooves at the ring's edge, the grunt of strained arms, the rattle of mail, the dry hiss of dust skimming over churned ground. Somewhere close, a banner cord snaps, and the silk comes down in a soft, almost domestic whisper. For one impossible instant, the battlefield feels very small, a courtyard, a son of the house, surrounded. Then the end comes quickly. They overwhelm him, not through greatness, through numbers, through timing, through the hard, ugly fact that enough men pressing from enough sides can bring down almost anyone born of woman. He is struck, rises, struck again, sways, answers once more with the last strength in him. It is less like watching a warrior fall than watching a lamp burn fiercely just before the oil is gone. The sun slips lower. Dust turns red gold. Abhimanyu, son of Arjuna, nephew of Krishna, husband of Uttara, child who heard war before he ever saw the sky, gives all he has left to the closing day. And then he falls, not with ugliness, not with noise drawn out for effect. He falls as heroes do in the old songs, sudden and immense, as if some bright pillar has been removed from the world, and everyone nearby must quickly pretend they never leaned on it. The earth receives him. For a moment, no one moves. That is the strangest part. After so much shouting, the hush, even the men who helped bring him down seem caught by what they have done. Before them lies not merely an enemy prince, not merely one more young warrior claimed by Kurukshetra, but a radiance they had to gather in a crowd to extinguish. Victory does not sit easily on such a moment. It has too much ash in it. The battlefield holds its breath. You can smell evening now under the battle smell, cooling dust, trampled grass releasing sweetness at last, the faint smoke of far-off campfires beginning to rise. Overhead, vultures circle in widening patterns, patient as kings. But near where Abhimanyu lies, there is a pocket of stillness, as if even the field knows a line has been crossed. Some among the Kaurava ranks lift their voices in triumph. It sounds thin. Some say nothing at all, because there are sights that accuse without speaking. A broken chariot, scattered weapons, the bent wheel lying a little way off, the young still form at the center of too many footprints. No herald needs to explain this scene. Everyone who sees it understands. He was trapped. He was isolated. He fought on. He fell. That understanding moves through the ranks like cold water. Outside the formation, the battle still rages, but news travels strangely in war, not by clean announcement, by faces, by hesitation, by one rider turning too quickly, by another refusing to meet a friend's eyes, by the shape grief makes even before words arrive. The first men who know cannot bear to be the first to say it. A messenger starts forward, then checks his horse. Another asks with his whole face and gets only silence. Across the field, The sun leans toward the west as if nothing in the world has changed. Chariots still roll. Standards still whip in the wind. Orders are still shouted. Men still strike and fall. Kurukshetra has no time to stop for one life, however beloved. And yet, everything has changed. The Pandava side begins to feel it before hearing it. Some severing in the air, some wrongness. Bhima fights harder, which is one way grief often arrives before news. Yudhishthira's heart goes uneasy in his chest. Satyaki glances again and again toward the maze that should have broken open by now. The twins trade a look they will remember later and hate. You can feel that spread of dread yourself, like wind moving through tall, dry grass before the storm is visible. Far away, beyond immediate slaughter, camp servants look toward the field and count returning standards in their minds. Women at prayer pause over lamps. The smoke from evening offerings rises straight for a moment in the still air. Somewhere, a horse, riderless, finds its way back with foam on its chest and eyes too wide. That is how disaster begins to travel, not as a shout, as a shiver. Near Abhimanyu's fallen form, the ring loosens at last. There is no need to keep closing. The work is done. The terrible practicality of war moves on, already hungry for the next task. Men who could not face him alone are suddenly busy elsewhere. Wheels turn, commands change. The day continues its remorseless business, but the place where he lies remains marked by dust, by broken gear, by the memory of impossible resistance. A little breeze comes with evening and stirs the torn pennants. It lifts dust from the chariot wheel and lays it down again. Light touches the curve of his cheek, the edge of his arm ring, the dark curls at his brow. For a breath, he looks less like the fallen and more like a sleeping prince after long exertion, as if someone might come with cool water and coax him gently awake. No one does. The sun slides lower, and now the news must go. One rider leaves first, urged by duty and dread. Another follows, because bad tidings should never travel alone if it can be helped. Their horses are lathered. Their faces are grey beneath the dust. They weave through wreckage, through skirmishes, through the wounded and the wandering. Every furlong makes the words heavier. Every heartbeat brings them closer to people who love him. Toward Yudhishthira, who sent him in with hope and necessity tangled together. Toward Bhima, who loved the boy with that huge rough heart of his. Toward the twins, who saw in him both nephew and younger brother. Toward Draupadi, who had watched him grow among lamplit evenings and exile talk and family meals that never stayed peaceful for long. Toward Subhadra, toward Uttara, toward Arjuna, still somewhere beneath another sky of arrows, not yet knowing that the dearest piece of his own youth has been laid down behind him. The messengers ride. The evening wind cools by a degree. Not enough to comfort, enough to notice. You can feel it on your skin after the furnace of day, carrying dust, sweat, and the faint smell of river mud from very far off. Conches have not yet sounded for rest. The war has not finished with anyone. Still the light softens, and in that softening grief begins its approach. No one can outrun it now. Behind them, on the field, Abhimanyu remains where he fell, and the western sky burns copper above Kurukshetra. Around him, the broken ring of the Chakravyuha slowly loses shape, as all things do. Lines blur, dust settles. The great machine that trapped him begins already to look less like design and more like aftermath. Only the stillness at its heart remains clear. A prince, a shattered chariot, a wheel in the dust. and across the long, wounded field, love is about to hear what war has done. So, after all of that, what were the ancient storytellers trying to tell us? Abhimanyu's life burns so brightly that it can feel almost unbearable to look at directly. He arrives wrapped in wonder, still in his mother's womb, listening to a warrior's lesson, as though destiny itself were leaning close to whisper in the dark. And then the lesson stops halfway. That small interruption matters. It matters so much because one of the deepest truths carried in his life is that human beings almost never receive the whole map. We learn the way in, not always the way out. That is not only Abhimanyu's story, it is everyone's. You are born into a world already turning, into family, duty, love, expectation, and time. Someone teaches you courage. Someone teaches you loyalty. Someone teaches you how to begin. But life does not sit beside you and calmly explain every consequence. That missing piece is part of being mortal, and still you go forward. That is why the image of the unborn child hearing sacred knowledge remains so haunting. It is tender, almost gentle. A mother resting, a father speaking, a baby listening through the warm darkness. Yet, from that soft beginning comes one of the hardest moments in the whole war. The ancient keepers of this tale wanted you to feel that strange closeness between home and battlefield, lullaby and doom. The things that shape a life often begin in quiet rooms. Then there is the matter of inheritance. Abhimanyu is born into greatness from every side. Arjuna is his father. Krishna is his uncle. The Pandavas are his world. Glory hangs around him like gold cloth in lamplight. But the story does not preserve him only to say that noble birth makes a noble man. It goes deeper than that. It shows how heavy love can be when it comes with expectation. He is trained by legends, blessed by the affection of heroes, admired before he is fully grown. You can feel the pressure of it, even in the bright parts. Every prince is expected to become something. Abhimanyu is expected to become everything. And yet, what makes him unforgettable is not that he perfectly copies the men before him. It is that when the moment comes, he acts from himself. That matters. In the language of the Gita, this is dharma, not just rule following, not just obedience. Dharma is the deep shape of what is yours to do. Your place, your responsibility, your sacred obligation inside a world that is often painful and confused. Abhimanyu's dharma was not comfortable. It did not come to him in old age after years of safety. It came early, fast and sharp on a morning full of dust and war cries, and he stepped into it. Not because he was guaranteed victory, not because he had been promised a return, but because there was a breach to make, elders depending on him, and no time left for anyone else to become brave. That is one of the great reasons his memory stays luminous. Courage in this tradition is not fearlessness. It is action taken while seeing clearly enough to know the cost may be terrible. Abhimanyu does not walk into the Chakravyuha as a fool. He knows enough to understand the danger. He knows enough to know that war does not become merciful just because the young are radiant. But he goes. That kind of bravery has a purity to it. And then the story turns, as the Mahabharata always does, towards sorrow. Because courage does not protect a person from unfairness. Dharma does not guarantee ease. Love does not bargain successfully with time. Uttara's wedding garlands are still fresh in memory, and already the field is taking him away. That contrast is part of the teaching too. Maya lives there, Maya is often explained as illusion, but not in the simple sense of everything being false. It is the spell that makes the passing world feel solid enough that you forget how fragile it is. A wedding seems like the beginning of a long, ordinary life. A son in armor seems too young to fall. A family gathered under lamps seems permanent. Then the wheel turns, and you see how thin the veil really was. The story does not say love is meaningless because it ends. It says the opposite. It says love is precious because nothing here can be held forever. That is why the sweetness matters so much. His mother's tenderness, his father's pride, Uttara's shy happiness, Krishna's quiet affection. These are not decorative details placed around a tragedy. They are the heart of it. They remind you what war actually costs. Not numbers, not banners, warmth, laughter, future mornings that never arrive. And when the rules of battle break around Abhimanyu, another lesson becomes impossible to ignore. Adharma does not always look like obvious wickedness with a dark cloud over its head. Sometimes it arrives as compromise, as desperation, as many strong men deciding, one after another, to permit what should never be permitted. That is how the field darkens. One line crossed, then another, then another. By the time Abhimanyu stands alone, the war has become something less noble than the words used to justify it. This is why his end matters beyond grief. His fall reveals the sickness spreading through Kurukshetra. The elders should have remembered who they were. The teachers should have remembered what they taught. The seasoned warriors should have remembered that there are ways of winning that stain the hand forever. And yet, even there, the story does not sink into emptiness, because karma is also moving. Not as a simple reward and punishment machine, not as quick revenge. Karma is the weaving of consequence. Every act enters the fabric. Nothing disappears. What happened to Abhimanyu does not vanish into the dust. It changes hearts. It hardens vows. It bends the course of the war. The field remembers. The families remember. Time remembers. So why preserve Abhimanyu not merely as a tragic boy, but as a shining one? Because he embodies something the epic refuses to let go of. The beauty of right action without certainty. Most people want assurance before they act. We want the full teaching, the safe return, the promise that courage will be rewarded in ways we can recognize. Abhimanyu does not receive those comforts. He receives a broken piece of knowledge, a great lineage, a brief season of joy, and one impossible day. From those fragments, he still makes something whole. He does what is his to do. He gives himself fully to the moment placed before him. And in that, he becomes more than unfortunate. He becomes exemplary. Not because suffering is romantic. It is not. Not because youth should be spent in war. It should not. But because there is a sacred dignity in stepping forward when Dharma calls, even when the road ahead is unfinished and the outcome hidden. That is the peace inside his story, strange as it sounds. Abhimanyu's life is short, but it is not wasted. Cut down, yes. Lost too soon, yes. But not empty, never empty. He moves through the Mahabharata like a streak of sunrise through storm clouds, brief, golden, unforgettable. The old storytellers wanted that brightness to remain with you. Not only the sorrow, the brightness too. So, when you think of him now, you are not meant to see only a boy trapped in a war machine. You are meant to remember a child listening in the womb, a prince laughing in palace halls, a young husband beneath wedding garlands, and a warrior who entered the spinning wheel because others needed him to. And that is enough to understand him. He knew the way in. He walked it anyway. And for that, his name still glows. And there is one more thing the storytellers leave in your hands. Abhimanyu is not remembered because he solved the whole war. He did not. He is remembered because he showed what a human being can be inside an unfinished world. You do not always get complete instruction. You do not always get fairness. You do not always get time. Still, there are moments when the heart knows, this is mine to do. That is where Dharma becomes real, not in a quiet definition, in action, in the pressure of a day when someone must step forward. His story also warns you against confusing victory with righteousness. The men who trapped him were powerful. They were experienced. Some were admirable in other moments of their lives. Yet, on that day, they allowed necessity to become an excuse. The epic wants you to feel the stain of that. Once adharma is welcomed for practical reasons, it does not stay small. It spreads. It changes everyone who touches it. And still, the tale does not leave you only with bitterness. It leaves you with memory shaped into meaning, with the knowledge that a short life can still be complete in spirit, with the reminder that love is not wasted just because it cannot prevent loss. Subhadra's tenderness matters. Uttara's joy matters. Arjuna's pride matters. Krishna's affection matters. They are part of what makes Abhimanyu's courage worth grieving. So after all the dust, that may be the deepest comfort here. The world is fragile. Maya lets us forget that. Then suffering makes us remember. But the answer is not to love less. The answer is to love more truthfully, knowing time moves, knowing bodies fail, knowing every bright season is temporary. That is not despair. It is clarity. And the old storytellers knew something else as well. A life is not measured only by length. Sometimes it is measured by intensity of presence, by whether a person stood where they were needed, by whether their name becomes a lamp for those who come later. Abhimanyu does. He enters the wheel incomplete. He acts anyway. He falls. And still, he remains bright. That is what they wanted you to carry from his story. Not only grief, not only outrage, but a quiet, steady recognition that even in a world of broken knowledge and broken rules, there is a way to live beautifully and bravely. And Abhimanyu lived that way. And when the noise of battle finally drains away, one small heartbeat carries his story forward. The war does not end when a warrior falls. It lingers. It clings to armor straps and torn banners. It settles into the cracks of chariot wheels. It follows men back to their tents and sits beside their lamps. And in the Pandava camp, after Abhimanyu is gone, grief moves like smoke, thin at first, then everywhere. Arjuna returns to that grief, like a man walking into a fire he cannot fight. You can feel the air around him before he speaks. Dust on his skin, sweat dried to salt, the leather of the bow grip still warm in his hand. He has come back expecting his son's bright face, that quick smile, that impatient energy young men have when they think evening is just another beginning. Instead, he finds lowered eyes, stillness, too much stillness. Then the truth reaches him. It does not arrive gently. His son entered the wheel. His son was left inside it. His son stood alone, where older men should have stood beside him. By the time Arjuna understands all of it, the sun has gone low, and something in him has gone low with it. Krishna stays near. He does not crowd him. He does not fill the silence with easy comfort. He stands there steady as a tree in dry wind, dark and quiet, holding the world together by remaining exactly where he is. Sometimes that is all love can do. Stay, breathe, keep the sky from splitting. All night, the camp feels different. No one laughs loudly, no one boasts. The cooking fires burn low, and even the horses seem subdued, stamping less, tossing their heads less, as if the whole field knows a young branch has been cut from a great tree. The smell of ghee lamps drifts through the dark, soft and buttery, mixed with sweat, old dust, and the faint sharpness of medicinal herbs. You are there outside the tent lines, listening to the wind push at the canvas. Somewhere, a conch sounds once in the distance, then stops. Somewhere, a grieving father sits with his bow across his knees and stares into nothing you can see. And in another chamber, far from the battlefield's roar, Uttara begins the long work of surviving. She is so young. That is the cruelest part, perhaps. She is still almost made of wedding music. You can still imagine the henna on her hands, the weight of fresh garlands, the shy brightness in her eyes from those days when the future looked crowded with ordinary happiness. Seasons, children, shared meals, small quarrels, the sort of life people rarely sing about because it seems too simple until it is gone. Now she sits with that future broken open. A lamp burns near her, small and steady. Its flame trembles whenever night air slips under the door. The room smells of oil, sandalwood, and wilted jasmine. Her ornaments are lighter now. Some have been set aside, some removed forever. The silk at her shoulder rustles when she bends forward and covers her face. No one can truly answer her sorrow. Not Subhadra, though a mother knows the shape of this pain in a way language cannot hold. Not Draupadi, who has seen too much torn away not to recognize another woman stepping into the cold country of loss. Not even Kunti, who has lived long enough to know that grief can sit in a family for generations, like an uninvited elder, eating with everyone, sleeping in every room. But they remain with her. That matters. Hands bring water. Hands smooth her hair. Hands relight the lamp when the wick sinks. In great epics, people speak of vows and kingdoms and celestial weapons. But sometimes the holiest thing is simply that women do not let another woman grieve alone. And within Uttara, hidden from all of them, Abhimanyu has left something behind. A child, small as a secret, fragile as a new leaf after summer heat. A life the war has not yet reached, though it is trying very hard. Time passes. The field of Kurukshetra goes on taking names. Drona falls, Karna falls, Duryodhana falls. One by one, the mighty leave the world they fought so hard to possess. The ground drinks the fury of princes and becomes quiet again. Grass will come later. Rain will come later. For now, there is ash, broken shafts, abandoned standards, and the slow circling of evening birds. Then comes the final cruelty. When the war is won and victory tastes like dust in the mouth, Ashwatthama, burning with rage, sends a terrible weapon toward the last heir growing in Uttara's womb. Not the mother on the battlefield, not the father with bow in hand, the child, the almost child, the one who has not yet seen moonlight. Uttara runs to Krishna. What else can she do? She comes frightened beyond dignity, beyond royal poise, beyond all the careful graces taught to princesses. She comes like any mother would come when danger reaches for the life inside her. Her breath is unsteady. Her veil has slipped. Her hands know only one thing to protect what remains. Krishna hears her, and Krishna who has guided chariots and counseled kings and watched this whole terrible season unfold, turns his care toward that hidden heartbeat. His protection closes around the unborn child, like light around a flame cupped in both hands. The weapon passes, the child lives, Parikshit, tested before birth, claimed by danger before his first cry. A boy born into a world emptied of so many faces he should have known. No father to lift him in strong young arms, no grandfather Abhimanyu to race him through palace courtyards. The great men around him are tired now, worn down, crowned perhaps, but hollowed. And still, he lives. You can almost hear it. That tiny newborn breath in a chamber washed clean after labor, while dawn pales slowly over a city that has forgotten how to celebrate without remembering its dead. The room smells of warm milk, wet cloth, and incense. Somewhere outside, a temple bell rings. Somewhere, an old nurse smiles through tears. Somewhere, Subhadra touches the baby's cheek and finds, for one unbearable moment, the echo of her son. Arjuna sees him too, a grandson, a continuation, not a replacement, never that. Nothing replaces Abhimanyu. But the line has not been severed. The lamp did not go out. It bent low, almost to darkness, and then rose again. Perhaps Arjuna stands very still when he looks at the child. Perhaps his warrior's hands, made for bowstring and reins, become suddenly careful, almost uncertain, when they lift such a small bundle. Perhaps he sees in that sleeping face not only the boy who was lost, but the boy who remains in another form, less like memory returning, more like dawn after a night too long to measure. You are there in that hush. The war is behind them, but not gone. It never fully goes. Yet in the nursery chamber, where a single lamp glows against the fading dark, another rhythm has begun. Not drums, not hooves, not the hiss of arrows, breathing, just breathing. And so Abhimanyu stays, not on the battlefield alone, with the broken chariot and the shattered ring of enemies, not only in Arjuna's grief, or Uttara's tears, or Subhadra's silent remembering. He stays in the child who opens his eyes beneath lamplight. He stays in the way families keep speaking a lost name until it becomes part prayer, part lullaby. Far away, the dust has settled over Kurukshetra. A broken wheel lies half buried in the earth. In a widow's chamber, a lamp burns low and steady. In a cradle, a child sleeps on, one hand curled like a folded petal. And through the long night of India, when the wind moves softly through the trees and the old stories return like distant bells, Abhimanyu's name is still spoken, softly, as if he has only just stepped beyond the firelight.